In Marvel, I am Homelander. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 76 The party turns into shock. John casually tossed Hellfire, a level 5 hero, aside like trash. Amidst the fearful gazes of most, John looked around, recognizing many of the people present. Meanwhile, as Hellfire collapsed, those around her instinctively took a few steps back, wanting to distance themselves. After all, her reputation wasn't great to begin with, and this time she'd offended Homelander and suffered a humiliating defeat, so few wanted to help. Ultimately, only Gwen hesitated, then, seeing Hellfire's pitiful state, tried to help her up, but was blocked by her telekinesis after a few steps. Hellfire used her telekinesis to clear away all the debris around her, glaring angrily at John, but ultimately didn't attack. Of course, her silence wasn't because she felt she couldn't win, but because she believed her loss to Homelander was due to her carelessness, getting within 3 meters of a physical ability user. Next time, as long as she maintained distance and avoided being ambushed, she was certain of victory. John's gaze lingered on Gwen for a moment, then he met Hellfire's angry stare with a hint of exasperation. This brat doesn't think she can beat me, does she? John thought to himself. I was just looking for an excuse. If she tries anything again, I'll just have a one-on-one confrontation. With that thought, John grinned at Hellfire with a wicked smile. Yet, the kind of smile Hulk gives Black Widow. Meanwhile, the live stream was buzzing with discussion. The real purpose of this gathering was still to showcase America's power. After all, they'd been playing the subservient role to Homelander for so long, they needed to make up for it in front of other countries. Only when the whole world acted like subservient, with Homelander as the ultimate subservient and everyone else as inferior, could the high-ranking officials in the White House, accustomed to their privileged status, feel some comfort. After all, happiness is relative. In fact, these American officials had already made arrangements to have a level 4 hero trained by Homelander later. Before the arrangement even began, Hellfire, a level 5 hero, couldn't wait to make his move. The spectacle was so over the top, so incredibly entertaining, that other powerful individuals and netizens watching the live stream simply couldn't believe it. How could Homelander so easily defeat an opponent of the same level? After all, they were all level 5 superheroes. What made him so much stronger than them? Beating an opponent of the same level like it was absurd. This fight is so fake, there aren't even any special effects. I could do it too. Yet, and Red flashed next to him too, pretending to want to fight but unable to. Who are they trying to fool? Are they kidding us? I didn't expect Homelander to act and deceive us. I'm turning against him. Various voices of skepticism rose online. In the netizens' analysis, there were only two possibilities. First, the so-called Hellfire's strength hadn't reached level 5. Second, this Hellfire's abilities had reached level 5, but he was just putting on an act. All the defeats were fake, just a stage drama. After the battle video was presented to experts for analysis, they concluded that the US was using an insulting performance to convince other countries that Homelander was invincible. This move by the US backfired, severely damaging its national credibility. Thus, the experts' conclusion successfully convinced those world leaders that everything was staged. After all, would you believe that 2 level 5 superheroes could end a battle so easily without even destroying a street? These netizens, experts, and leaders certainly didn't. Unless Homelander killed 2 level 5 superheroes on the spot, it would be difficult to clear his name. It's fortunate John didn't know about this, otherwise, he might have been surprised to hear such a request. Frankly, he'd never heard of such a request before, and he probably would have immediately agreed to fly to the other country to demonstrate how to tear apart level 5 ability users. However, even though John had tried to keep a low profile today, trouble still kept coming his way. After all, just because John didn't cause trouble today didn't mean trouble would stay away. How could that be? He's the main character. After dealing with Hellfire and witnessing Homelander's ruthless methods, few dared to provoke him. Only the president and vice president, his lackeys, came up to greet him and make their presence known. As the superhero gathering reached its halfway point, and the atmosphere was at its peak, suddenly all the lights went out. What happened? Did the power system malfunction? That shouldn't be possible, such an important event. What the hell? It can't be someone's sabotaging it, right? Trying to sabotage a superhero gathering? Are they tired of living? For a moment, everyone stared in astonishment at the darkened lights, wondering what had happened, or if this was part of the intermission preparations. Viewers watching the live stream also began discussing it. But the next moment, a beam of light shone on the wide wall, projecting an image of three people: President Ellis, Vice President Rodriguez, and the former Secretary of State, talking. "Jarvis, what's going on?" Stark asked from inside the hall. "Sir, just now, a hacker infiltrated the entire U.S. network, causing tens of millions of connected computers to download a total of 208 gigabytes of videos and images before immediately disconnecting them from the network," Jarvis said. "According to my analysis, the first scene of those downloaded videos perfectly matches the image on the wall right now. So, even if the image here is destroyed, there are already backups on those internet users' computers, right?" John, with his super hearing, overheard the conversation in Stark's earpiece and asked curiously. At the same time, his right hand was pulling on Ghost Spider's forearm, and Gwen was struggling, her face flushed, but she couldn't break free from John's grasp. "Be quiet. Who knows what will happen next? For your safety, it's best not to stray too far from me," John whispered in Gwen's ear. After giving his instructions, he turned to President Ellis, who was preparing to destroy the projection equipment, and said, "No need for that. They've clearly come prepared. In that case, let's have some fun with these rats." As soon as he spoke, Ellis immediately ordered his men to stop, and everyone obediently stood with John, watching the images on the wall. Sure enough, soon after the entire hall fell silent, the images on the wall began to move, and the president's voices echoed throughout the hall. Chapter 77: The Hulk is no longer happy. At the gathering, all the heroes were assembled, watching the scene unfold on the wall with the online viewers, their hearts filled with anticipation. However, some wondered why President Ellis's face was swollen so badly. As the video started moving, a bombshell was dropped. The president, his cheeks swollen, looked at the arriving Vice President and Secretary of State with an extremely serious expression and said, "Just now, the killer attacked the White House." WTF? Really? That's unbelievable. I think I've heard the biggest joke of the century. The killer attacked the White House, ha ha ha, that's hilarious. Mentioning the name killer didn't elicit a reaction from the heroes at the scene, but the viewers in the live stream exploded. They knew, of course, which superhero the title referred to, but the question was, why would the killer attack the White House? Some with good memories immediately recalled that the White House had indeed been attacked by terrorists 2 months prior. Ellis's face in the news at the time was indeed swollen, and next to him was the former Secretary of State who had died in the terrorist attack. In the scene, the other two nodded to indicate they understood, having been informed of the matter beforehand. Rodriguez, however, pointed at the president's face with concern, asking, "Are you all right?" "That's exactly what I'm about to say," Ellis said with an extremely serious expression. "Just now, the nemesis called himself Homelander, and I got slapped for calling him by the wrong title. You'd better be careful not to let it slip." All the heroes present stared at Homelander with astonishment, and at the president, Ellis, standing beside him, looking pale and meek. John remained perfectly calm under their gazes, subtly releasing Gwen's wrist and gently patting Ellis's shoulder, saying, "Get me a chair. I'm tired of standing, I want to sit and watch." "Yes, yes, yes," Ellis replied, barely daring to breathe, obediently running to the side to fetch a chair and placing it behind John. This servile behavior only made the others look at him with even stranger expressions. The images on the wall continued playing, but the time jumped to several tens of minutes later. By then, the number of people in the conference room had increased to more than a dozen. On the giant screen in front of them, there were hundreds of middle-aged people connected via video. These were all well-known figures in the United States. People from every state had found their governor among them. The topic of their discussion was none other than how to deal with Homelander's attack in a few minutes, ultimately resorting to a kneeling slid when all other options were exhausted. Standing before the projector, facing the increasingly strange gaze of the hero, John slowly stroked his chin. Frankly, from the White House's perspective, His actions back then did seem quite terrifying. Meanwhile, Bruce Banner, hearing that John had come to cause trouble because of General Ross, secretly cheered. He had long disliked that old father-in-law by the wall lamp, and since Betty hadn't been implicated in the end, Homelander truly lived up to his idol. The time on the screen jumped again, 2 minutes later. The officials, who had been quietly waiting for Homelander's arrival, suddenly looked out the window, their faces filled with confusion. Then Nick Fury's expression changed drastically. Just as they were wondering what was happening from their surveillance camera's perspective, a huge head suddenly crashed into the conference room, directly into the video feed, startling many people present. Landed safely, thank goodness no one was killed. In the video, John, with a violent and sinister look on his face, jumped down from the head of the Statue of Liberty and looked at the president, saying, "How's your consideration? Have you agreed to my demands? Is this really Homelander?" Everyone in the room looked at the young man sitting calmly in his chair, his right hand supporting his head, watching the video with a peaceful expression. Both his appearance and demeanor were completely different from the adorable person in the video. It really was the same person. But then, John's demand for 1,000 heads, his idea of melting the Secretary of State's brain in a vat and the governor's brain in a vat, and his concept of the human centipede, along with a final demand for at least 10,000 criminals per month, all made the hearts of those present race. Damn it, knowing so much, they won't be silenced, will they? All the heroes below level 4 thought in despair. Please watch this with me, I don't want to say it a second time. John turned around and looked at the superheroes, high-ranking officials, and security personnel maintaining order behind him who were preparing to flee. His tone was full of coercion, making everyone very uncomfortable. If it were 10 minutes ago, these people might have argued back, but now, with the other level 5 heroes not speaking, they could only nod with forced smiles and return to their original positions. At this point, Homelander's behavior and tone basically confirmed that everything was real, which caused fans in the live stream to start unfollowing him, and all sorts of insults against Homelander began to flood the chat. Of course, some people from other countries also thought this was too damn satisfying, beating up the US government, something they could only dream of. But a question also arose, if Homelander was behind all of this, why did things take a different turn? Their questions didn't linger long, because after John left, the screen jumped forward again, revealing the contents of the second meeting, leaving viewers speechless. Under Rodriguez's appeasement policy, a series of plans to curry favor with Homelander, spoken by these usually aloof officials, were utterly astonishing. This was too much of a sycophancy. No wonder they said they knew nothing until today. It was all a cover-up by the US government, terrorist attacks on the White House, terrorist destruction of the Statue of Liberty. The cover-up was quite good. The live stream was filled with mockery of the US government, but Bruce Banner, watching from the sidelines, was starting to lose his mirth. Everything had been going well, retaliation against Ross, attacks on the government, etc. Banner hadn't been particularly emotional about these things, so he'd been watching with a detached, spectator's attitude. What? Homelander slapped the president? Laugh. What? Homelander destroyed the Statue of Liberty? Laugh. What? Homelander wanted Ross dead, and 1,000 others to die with him. That was even more hilarious. What? He wanted to give Ross's wife and daughters to Homelander? That was hilarious. Ah. Hearing Rodriguez's proposal to give Betty to Homelander, the Hulk couldn't sit still. Although it was just a proposal. Did he actually give her away? Chapter 78 Natural Disaster? Man-made catastrophe. How could you do this? Don't you know that forcing someone violates human rights? Bruce Banner, feeling his skin turn green and his head begin to change color after his transformation, grabbed Rodriguez by the collar in front of everyone and loudly questioned him. There was no coercion, your girlfriend did it willingly. Rodriguez, clearly recognizing Bruce Banner, hurriedly defended himself. With this commotion, the projected image thoughtfully paused, giving them ample time to process the situation, and all eyes turned to him. She did it willingly? Bruce Banner said in disbelief. Impossible, how could Betty do that? In a fierce internal struggle, Bruce Banner could no longer suppress his frantic heartbeat. Some signs of transformation began to appear, his skin began to turn slightly bluish, and his height increased to 2 meters. But in the end, he managed to control himself, maintaining his last shred of rationality as he stared at Rodriguez, roaring in a rough, deep voice, "Explain yourself. We're doomed." Inside the helicarrier, Nick Fury felt he had only meant well but had made things worse. Inside the seaside villa, Betty Ross, watching the live stream, covered her mouth, staring in astonishment at her angry ex-boyfriend on the screen. Over the past 6 months, with her studies and life with John, she had gradually accepted and even enjoyed this lifestyle. At the same time, her memories of her ex-boyfriend were becoming hazy. She couldn't quite remember when she last thought of him. Seeing Bruce Banner standing up for her, Betty, now in Homelander form, was deeply moved, but that was it. Meanwhile, Rodriguez, grabbed by Bruce Banner and looking at the green-faced man before him, felt a pang of panic. But turning back to John's calm gaze, he mustered his courage and said, "First, if your girlfriend doesn't serve Homelander, Ross's entire family will be purged by the government. And most importantly, Betty did this for you." "For me?" Bruce was stunned. "That's right. After Ross captured you, you were about to become military research material. Betty chose to sacrifice herself as a bargaining chip for your freedom, the condition being that I let you go. Otherwise, do you think you could walk out of the military base so easily?" Rodriguez said calmly. But every word inflicted immense pain on Bruce's heart, overwhelming him with immense agony. "No, this can't be, I don't believe it." Bruce instinctively released his grip, taking 2 steps back. In his daze, his previously suppressed heartbeat suddenly began to race. Under this terrifying blow, a Hulk stronger than ever before was born. In its initial stage, the Hulk's height instantly reached 7 meters. Roar! A furious roar erupted from his mouth, and in the next instant, a terrifying force of over 100,000 tons burst forth from his body, slamming fiercely towards Rodriguez. After killing this culprit, his next target was Homelander. No, it should be said that everyone else here would die. Ross's legs trembled as he looked at the raised hand, larger than a sandbag, and in an instant, John's figure appeared in front of him. Boom! With a deafening roar, John was completely enveloped by the Hulk's hand. Faced with a terrifying force of over 100,000 tons, the marble floor within 10 meters of the two instantly shattered under the pressure of the palm strike. The shockwave blew everything out of the building, shattering glass items inside into tiny fragments. A massive cloud of dust enveloped the area within a 10-meter radius. Before Hulk could even act, Red Flash had cleverly moved all the heroes below level 3 to a safe distance. As the dust settled, the interior was gradually revealed. Under Hulk's palm, Homelander stood unharmed, the ground within 3 meters of him completely unscathed. The area beyond 3 meters, however, was shattered beyond recognition, as if bombed. "Sorry, ex-husband," John said calmly. "This dog is quite obedient, it's a shame you killed him like this." With that, John slightly raised his right hand, much to everyone's surprise. In that instant, Straw Hat Luffy and Red Flash's expressions changed simultaneously. They both wanted to rush forward to pull Hulk away, but the distance was too great. In Luffy's eyes, Homelander's right hand seemed to disappear for a fleeting moment, as if in a frame drop. Even in Red Flash's eyes, Homelander's fist was so fast it became a blur. When John's right hand reappeared, a terrifying cloud of dust, like a nuclear explosion, instantly enveloped the entire area. From above, the massive cloud of dust spread out, completely obscuring a radius of 100 meters. Whoa! Behind John, Gwen managed to grab the red cape behind his black suit, almost being blown away. Stark wasn't so lucky. He was thrown several meters by the powerful storm, his armor ripped away. Faced with this tornado-like sandstorm, everyone except a few level 4 or higher heroes had no chance to think, only able to protect themselves and survive. After dozens of seconds of this terrifying dust storm, everything gradually settled down. Fortunately, no one died. Luckily, Red Flash had moved everyone 100 meters away before Hulk attacked, otherwise, dozens would have died. As the dust settled, the faint moonlight revealed a scene that sent a chill down everyone's spine. Like a natural disaster, the Hulk had vanished before John, replaced by a teardrop-shaped ruin stretching 200 to 300 meters. Since the gathering was near the edge of the island, the area within 100 meters of John was entirely composed of seawater. But before John's fist, the shimmering water surged backward under the powerful force, splitting in two to clearly reveal the dark, damp sump beneath, only gradually closing again as the dust settled. Since ancient times, natural disasters have been something people have avoided at all costs. With the immature understanding of that time, these so-called floods and earthquakes were generally considered punishments from the gods. It wasn't until modern technology matured that people realized these were normal phenomena of nature. And at this moment, before everyone, a life truly displayed this terrifying scene, as horrific as a natural disaster. Everyone was speechless, feeling an urge to kneel and worship. Before them, John at this moment seemed like a god. Chapter 79, Wrong Answer. I went a bit too far. John sighed softly, looking at the venue that had transformed from a hotel into an open-air meeting place. 2 days ago, he had once again filled up his progress bar, naturally increasing his strength by about 100 times. If someone asked him how strong he was now, John would say after a moment's thought that he was probably still at the peak of the 6th level. Based on the idea that level 1 is like destroying bricks and level 5 is like destroying streets, then level 6 should be the so-called destroying a city. John admitted that with his current strength, he still couldn't destroy a medium-sized city with a population of 500,000 to 1 million with a single, charged punch. After all, according to his calculations, to completely destroy New York City, with an area of 1,214 square kilometers and slaughter nearly 7 or 8 million people, would take a full minute. During this time, he would need to fly continuously, evenly unleashing his punches across every kilometer of New York. At an average speed of 20 kilometers per second, he would need to punch more than 100 times per second to achieve this goal, and even then, probably only about 2% of New York City's residents would survive. Because of his sudden increase in strength, he hadn't had anything worth fighting for recently. Suddenly facing a battle, he became excited and went a little overboard, resulting in this situation. John turned around and saw that Gwen behind him was unharmed except for a slightly faster heart rate. As for the projector and other equipment, they were shattered to pieces, and even the live streaming equipment was completely destroyed, making it impossible to watch. Since we can't watch, what's with those expressions? John looked at the dazed Red Flash with a puzzled expression. You suddenly caused so much destruction, and you're asking others what those expressions are? Gwen retorted, then took a step back to distance herself from John. Even though she knew John had turned bad, she never imagined he would be this wicked. The methods he used, like the brain in a vat and the human centipede, were unthinkable. And the part about Ross's daughter made her inexplicably uncomfortable. John didn't seem to care. He flickered slightly, then gently patted Red Flash to bring him back to his senses. Now bring those people back. We need to have a meeting, okay? Red Flash took a step back, somewhat fearfully. If Homelander's speed was slightly inferior to his a week ago, now his eyes could barely keep up with the opponent's punches. What had happened in just a few days? The gap had widened so much? Based on his observation just now, if John ran at that punching speed proportionally, his movement speed would be at least Mach 100, twice as fast as his, and that might not even be at full strength. Red Flash obediently nodded. The next second, the president, high-ranking officials, and various heroes who had been 100 meters away were now back in front of John. President Ellis suddenly remembered what Nick Fury had said during the White House meeting. Would John advance step by step through stages like infancy, youth, and maturity? Each step was a leap forward. Had he just become stronger again? Rodriguez, on the other hand, was ecstatic. He knew that the ruins before him were practically created by Homelander to protect him. He thought to himself, I'm so awesome. From now on, as long as I do my job as a dog. With Homelander behind me, I'll be able to walk around like a madman. Black Emperor swallowed hard. His goal was similar to Hellish Blizzard's, to defeat John and become the world's #1. But John had shown him with a single punch that even with his abilities, taking such a terrifying punch would likely cause him to explode from absorbing too much energy in a short time. As for Hellish Blizzard, although her expression didn't change, her legs were trembling slightly. After all, this world didn't have the world's #2 sister to back her up, and Homelander's performance was at least S-class. Since the video recording is unavailable, let's start finding the culprit, John said, looking at the hundreds of people who had returned. First, I hope you all will be more self-aware. Those who know about or have some understanding of this incident, please step forward. John looked at the crowd and waited silently for 3 seconds. The next moment, he teleported into the crowd and looked at a level 2 hero, saying, Your heart was racing just now, so do you know anything? What? I don't know. The hero instinctively tried to deny it, but the next moment his head exploded, blood splattering everywhere. Wrong answer. John said, then appeared in front of another hero, saying, And you? I. The hero's legs trembled, his mouth quivered, and his brain began to organize its thoughts, but the next moment his head also exploded. Wasting my time. John teleported to another person, saying, "And you?" I know. The man immediately knelt before John, while an angry accusation rang out from the side. "Hey, you've gone too far." Luffy pointed at John, saying, "What if they don't know anything? I know this has nothing to do with you, so you'd better not meddle." John said, his eyes filled with a strong warning. As for Gwen and Stark, John had already sent them to the other side of New York City before the case even began. Knowing John's personality, they were aware that if he took them away, he would do something they would find unacceptable, so they were on their way. How could I not care? Luffy gritted his teeth, his right hand suddenly swinging backward, extending dozens of meters. Gum. Idiot, why would I give you a chance to charge up? Do you think I'd take your attack head on? John said calmly. In Japanese manga battles like Luffy's, the normal fighting phase is usually unremarkable, barely affecting even nearby buildings. But if given the chance to charge up and unleash a powerful attack, the destructive power of that strike might increase 100-fold, perhaps even comparable to his previous attack. In a flash, John gently grabbed Luffy's outstretched right hand, shoved it into his stomach, pulled it out of his intestines, and tied it in a tight knot with his other limbs. I don't want to kill you, so you can get lost. John grabbed Luffy, then kicked him hard, sending his ball-shaped body flying. With the force I just used, combined with my bioforce field, I might be able to kick all the way to Washington, D.C. next hour. Chapter 80, Solving Cases with Superpowers, Finding People with Super Brains. Alright, now that the problem child has left quite voluntarily, is anyone else having problems? John, having just delivered a powerful kick to Luffy, turned and smiled. You call being kicked away by you voluntarily leaving? Looking at the 17-year-old boy who still seemed so childish, everyone's heart skipped a beat, and they all shook their heads. Alright, let's continue solving the case. John smiled as he approached the kneeling hero begging for mercy and muttered to himself, I think I have a knack for solving cases. I found the real culprit in such a short time. 3 people killed in such a short time, and you even used heartbeats to identify the killer? Even with a lie detector, you wouldn't dare do that. You call this solving a case? Everyone inwardly scoffed, but no one dared to speak. Tell me, what do you know? John, having found the killer with his superpowers, laughed. Actually, this has nothing to do with me, but just a few days ago, the blind man Gavin stumbled back to the dorm, saying you'd gouged out his eyes and wanted us to avenge him. Of course, I refused without hesitation, but a few other heroes still left with him. I'm truly sorry, I should have reported his whereabouts to the government immediately. The hero knelt before John, tears streaming down his face, revealing the truth he knew, which reminded John of something like this. So it was him. John clapped his hands with a smile. He had spared the man's life out of kindness, never expecting it would cause him so much trouble. Seeing the trembling hero kneeling before him, John, having learned the truth, smiled and helped him up, saying, Come on, why are you so scared? You just withheld information, what's there to be afraid of? Just be careful next time. At this moment, Ellis stepped into distance herself, saying, We've had Gavin wanted for days, but we haven't caught him yet. I know. John patted Ellis's head gently. This is my own doing, I won't blame you. John's tone was incredibly gentle. If it weren't for the 2 bodies on the ground growing cold, they might have actually believed him. Now that our superpowers have solved the case, let's use our super brains, John said, activating his supervision the next moment. With his strength increased 100-fold on average, his gaze instantly covered several surrounding cities. At that moment, countless faces flooded into John's brain. Whether it was Stark and Gwen chasing after him at full speed, or the spherical Luffy buried inside a building, or even strangers he'd never seen before. In that split second, John stored the faces of at least 10 million people, beautiful or ugly, handsome or ordinary, in his brain, comparing them one by one with Gavin's appearance. 3 seconds later, after comparing at least 30 million people, John successfully located his target in a building near the White House. Found you. Don't leave yet, I need to take care of some things, John instructed those present. Then, in an instant, John's figure vanished from his spot, traversing over 400 kilometers in 10 seconds, flying towards Gavin. How is it there now? Gavin asked from inside a building in Washington. Because of John's punch, all the live broadcast equipment was destroyed, so apart from those on the scene, the outside world knew nothing of what happened afterward. Other countries, eager to know the outcome, were currently using satellites to fly over New York City to see what had happened, a capability Gavin clearly lacked. I don't know, all the equipment has been destroyed, but we've successfully revealed Homelander's true identity to the outside world. I believe that once this incident escalates tonight, he'll be utterly disgraced, one superhero exclaimed excitedly. In fact, everyone present was excited because they had actually outmaneuvered Homelander from across the city and survived. The next moment, a crimson ray ripped through the building in front of them, and houses above their floors were instantly sent flying into the air, disappearing without a trace. Looking up, they saw John, his eyes bloodshot, grinning maliciously at them. Finally found you, you little rats. How is this possible? How could Homelander find us so quickly? They thought in panic. As if encountering a ghost, one of the superheroes, slightly disoriented, let out a piercing scream. But the next moment, each of them was completely detached from their torso, their jaws dislocated, rendering them unable to utter a sound. Don't worry, this is just to prevent you from committing suicide. After all, how can someone who ruined my reputation die so easily? Your good days are yet to come. John grins maliciously. Gavin, you surely want your eyes to see again, right? Once we get to the lab, I'll use lizard serum to completely heal your bodies. You're welcome. No. Just kill me already, Gavin cried out inwardly, knowing the newcomer was Homelander, for he could guess the torture hell that awaited him. Because John had coincidentally severed his limbs, Gavin's spatial ring went out of control and fell to the side. This meant he couldn't control it remotely and could only wait desperately in darkness for Homelander's execution. John found a rope somewhere, pierced their shoulder blades in an instant, and then slowly flew back to New York with them strung together. 2 minutes later, John returned to the party. Under the man's somewhat reluctant gaze, he tossed a man directly in front of Ellis, saying, "These guys are yours. Remember, don't kill them. Make them experience the most agonizing torture. Also, get them to confess everything they know. If there are any accomplices outside, you should know how to deal with them." John's eyes were filled with violence and murderous intent. He had originally planned to cultivate his composure, but these few scumbags had ruined it. Yes, Ellis replied meekly. There's one more thing. John placed his hand on the president's shoulder. I need 100,000 criminals within 3 days. Ellis hesitated, but Rodriguez stepped forward and said, no problem, we can definitely complete the mission. John nodded, comparing the progress bar, which was almost zero due to leveling up, to the heroes before him. He simply couldn't afford to kill them. So he simply waved his hand and said, you can go now. Don't tell anyone what happened after the live stream was interrupted. I want to play a game next. Chapter 81 To save the people, first save the officials. Yes. Hearing that they were still alive, all the superheroes nodded vigorously, relieved. Of course, some heroes still had doubts, fearing that Homelander might pull off a I don't kill women trope. So some of them, while leaving, kept looking at John as they slowly backed away. Although they knew that if John wanted to attack, they wouldn't be able to resist even with their full defense, they were still quite panicked. John, of course, was unaware of their ulterior motives. He merely glanced at them and then vanished. Only after confirming that Homelander was gone did these people completely relax. Red Flash and several other level 5 heroes exchanged glances, only to be shocked to find that only he and Black King remained. Luffy was gone because he was kicked away by Homelander, so it was normal. But what about Hellish Snowman? Thinking of her beautiful face and impressive figure, a guess gradually surfaced in their minds, but they dared not think about it further. At the gathering, as all the heroes left, Ellis, who remained, looked at Rodriguez with worry in her eyes. Because the environment they had painstakingly created over the past 3 months to restrain Homelander had been completely destroyed by those idiots. The public opinion surrounding Homelander would be 1,000 times worse than before. In this situation, even an ordinary person would likely suffer from depression due to cyberbullying. The problem is, can Homelander be treated like an ordinary person? Others can only suffer in silence when cyberbullied, but for Homelander, it's like having their hearts ripped out. What do we do? Ellis looked at the vice president, seeking his opinion. Hadn't they successfully appeased Homelander using all three strategies before? Rodriguez looked at the president and slowly uttered a sentence, 200,000. Within 3 days, you must provide Homelander with 200,000 criminals. What? Ellis was stunned. We need to completely sever ties with those netizens who cyberbullied him. At the same time, you must double the amount of the 100,000 criminals Homelander requested. But if we do that, Homelander might go on a killing spree. Rodriguez hesitated. Through the U.S. government's research on Homelander, they had, of course, roughly figured out some of his limitations. According to the expert's personality profile, Homelander's character is fundamentally incapable of actively seeking good deeds, and he has little desire for killing. Given this, why does Homelander demand the lives of 10,000 criminals every month, and why did he massacre 4,000 or 5,000 New York prisoners before attacking the White House? These actions suggest that Homelander is subject to certain limitations. He must perform at least 5 times more good deeds before committing evil. Furthermore, his terrifying increase in strength is likely related to his good deeds. Knowing this, and recalling John's sudden demand for a list of 100,000 criminals before leaving, everyone present felt a chill. Ellis knew Rodriguez knew this too, yet he still directly demanded the list be doubled? Ellis, save the officials before saving the people. Seeing the president still hesitating, a flash of impatience crossed Rodriguez's eyes, questioning whether his superior understood the gravity of the situation. It was because of our hard work that they enjoyed their peaceful lives. Now we can't hold on any longer. It's time for them to hold on a little longer. Besides, the death of a few idiots can improve the overall quality of the next generation. If you don't draw a clear line now, you'll be caught in the crossfire during the Great Purge of the Motherland. Rodriguez emphasized, it's only 40 or 50,000 people at most. What are you hesitating about? It's not like they were going to die. Rodriguez realized he had been too blunt, coughed twice, and looked at the president, saying, if you can't make the decision, you can delegate this matter to me. I guarantee I can handle it properly, all right. Seeing the vice president's reaction, Ellis finally agreed after some hesitation. Okay, wait for my news. At the same time, convene an internal meeting immediately and call all the governors who attended the previous meeting. We've reached the most critical situation, Rodriguez said to the Secretary of State beside him. Also, remember to find the level 5 hero, Straw Hat Boy, but don't let him appear in the next few days. Okay. The Secretary of State nodded. That's it. Rodriguez suddenly thought of a very insidious idea. You do this, immediately have someone clean up all the damage Homelander caused, so that no other country's satellites will notice anything amiss. Also, keep those heroes completely shut up. Then, for 10 days, ban all usernames using American networks. No comments will be allowed on any software or website. Ignore comments from other countries. Domestic netizens can only speak using foreign domains. After saying this, Rodriguez excitedly pumped his fist, thinking about his plan. I'm a fucking genius. The Secretary of State had obviously also considered Rodriguez's plan, and hesitated before saying, wouldn't that be a bit much? I mean, won't Homelander be unhappy? Homelander himself said to shut those superheroes up. Rodriguez laughed. Obviously, he doesn't want others to know he has such destructive power yet. We've executed it perfectly. Now, just let the dust settle, and we'll see Homelander's game has moved from America to a foreign country. It'll be time for those foreigners to experience our pain. Rodriguez affirmed, I believe that once the American people witness the Homelander's swift and decisive actions, our government's approval rating will not only not decline, but will rise sharply. No problem, I'll have them carry it out right away. The Secretary of State nodded in agreement, while President Ellis remained silent throughout, simply watching. That night, John returned to his seaside villa, but this time he wasn't alone. A struggling girl was slung across his shoulder. Bastard, let me go. Hellfire Fubuki blushed deeply, her terrifying psychic power instantly enveloping John's body, but even his venom suit remained unscathed. You scum. Carrying Fubuki, John's expression remained perfectly calm as he said, if I had known things would turn out like this, why did you have to provoke me? You didn't think I treated my enemies the same way I treated my friends, did you? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 House Husband and Countryman. As night fell, John's punch sent a terrifying gust of wind engulfing the entire gathering. All the live streaming equipment was destroyed in that instant, but online discussions about Homelander didn't cease. Before the live stream even started, millions of computers worldwide had automatically downloaded the content. After the broadcast was interrupted, netizens immediately uploaded their downloaded files, allowing the entire internet to reconstruct the projected content. Then, those foreign netizens who had been mocking the US government discovered that it wasn't just the US. Leaders in other countries were also well aware of Homelander's brutality, but had tacitly accepted the situation due to his power. Now, some self-righteous netizens began to crumble, realizing that all crows are black. Of course, with the exposure of Homelander's misdeeds, those countries quickly issued statements, claiming that they had previously acted under pressure from Homelander, but now, with a level 5 hero, they could defend themselves without restraint and harshly criticize Homelander's actions. Meanwhile, some countries seemed to feel this wasn't enough, and they united to issue a joint statement. If the US government allows it, they can form an anti-Homelander alliance, with a dozen other level 5 heroes from around the world joining forces to eliminate the insects and shut down the sun. This immediately put pressure on the US government, and everyone was watching to see its response. Sure enough, the US government statement came immediately. While John was still engaged in in-depth discussions with others, the government directly announced that a briefing on the incident would be held at noon 3 days later, where Vice President Rodriguez would directly answer everyone's questions. Meanwhile, in a massive crater 10 meters in diameter on the outskirts of New York, a SHIELD agent, looking at the unconscious man inside, pulled out a walkie-talkie and said, "Sir, Bruce Banner has been spotted here." Upon seeing the Hulk's trail, Nick Fury nodded. "Bring him back immediately." 2 hours later, Nick Fury looked at Bruce Banner, who was gradually regaining consciousness, and said, "I'm sorry, this was my mistake. I shouldn't have let you go to the party." Banner, bound hand and foot, stared intently at Nick Fury with bloodshot eyes. "Betty's matter, do you know about it?" Nick Fury didn't answer, only slightly turning his head away, but this was practically an admission. After all, he had seen the projection. Nick Fury was in the White House. Homelander's power is formidable. I hope you can abandon your thoughts of revenge. How about we leave it at that? Okay, but I don't want to continue being a superhero. Please transfer me back to my old research institute, Bruce said through gritted teeth. Seeing that the other party was open-minded, Nick Fury was quite relieved and immediately agreed to the request. "No problem, you can go back tomorrow. Is there anything you need now?" "I need a cell phone so I can let Dr. Odin at the Research Institute know I'm coming back." "No problem, the cost of the phone can be reimbursed." Nick Fury immediately agreed. Half an hour later, Bruce Banner, having regained his phone, dialed the number from memory, and it was quickly answered. "Hello, who is this?" In the dead of night, the voice on the other end sounded very impatient. "Professor Odin, this is Bruce Banner. Regarding the stimulant we discussed earlier. How long will it take you to produce it at the earliest?" "Bruce." The other end was surprised, obviously knowing that Banner had been cheated on, but still immediately replied, "That depends on how much dosage you need." Banner immediately said, "The more the better." In the early morning, Hellish Blizzard slowly woke up from her coma, feeling her throat almost burning with thirst. Opening her eyes, she found Homelander sleeping soundly beside her. Moreover, Homelander's arms were wrapped around her, his expression utterly peaceful, like a harmless little boy. "He's quite quiet when he's asleep, and quite handsome too. I remember he's under 22 according to American law. Did I break a law yesterday?" Hellish Fubuki thought absurdly. How could such a thing happen? Looking at the obediently sleeping Homelander, Hellish Fubuki felt a surge of annoyance. With a slight urge for revenge, she slightly channeled her Nen power, wanting to wake Homelander, but simply because of the Nen power, the same scene as last night repeated itself. Ugh! Hellish Fubuki covered her mouth to keep quiet, her eyes utterly speechless. Ah! It's the second day. John groggily opened his eyes, looking at the sunlight streaming in through the window, realizing something, and stopped moving. Sorry, it's muscle memory. You. Hellish Fubuki was on the verge of tears. It seemed that whenever she encountered him, she was always the unlucky one. With a pop, John stood up and scratched his head. Seeing the other person's slightly chapped lips, he hesitated for a moment, then took a glass of milk from the refrigerator in the villa's side room. After sterilizing it with his heat vision and cooling it with his icy breath, he handed it to her. HMPH, you don't actually think this can make up for the damage I suffered, do you? Hellish Blizzard looked at the milk being handed to her, crossed her arms, and snorted coldly, besides, I didn't even brush my teeth this morning. Whoosh! The next moment, Blizzard felt herself being transported to the outside of the villa, holding a glass of warm milk in her hands. Ah! Hellish Blizzard screamed. She was completely naked. Had he just thrown her out like that? What if there were security cameras nearby? What a nuisance. It's like I'm the one serving her now. John slammed the door shut, ignoring Hellish Blizzard's screams outside, and went into the bedroom. Outside the villa, after the scream, Hellish Blizzard noticed that her coat, which had been damaged by the heat vision, was back on, with slight signs of stitching at the original tear, and she smelled of toothpaste. Not only that, but upon closer inspection, she noticed she still smelled of shower gel, and her hair was unexpectedly smooth. This meant that in that brief moment, John had not only brushed her teeth and washed her face, but also thoroughly cleaned her from head to toe, and even sewed up her clothes before sending her out. Thinking of this, the girl instinctively tightened her clothes, her face flushing crimson. This has been censored and modified to be more subtle. The best parts have been removed. Chapter 83 One key transforms into 200. In the following days, Hellish Blizzard frequently arrived at Homelander's villa in the evenings and stayed all night, only returning to her own villa in the morning. Of course, her excuse each time was to get revenge on John, intending to blow up his villa right away. John was practically speechless at this legally owned little devil, tacitly agreeing to give her a good beating after her arrival. 3 days later, at noon, in his seaside villa, John lay on the sofa scrolling through his phone. While scrolling, his body subconsciously began exercising in coordination with Hellish Blizzard. After 3 days of the incident escalating, John suddenly felt like checking the comments from netizens. He discovered that all accounts with American IP addresses had been banned, and the comments on the internet were from people in other countries. Those people in the White House are pretty smart, aren't they? John casually remarked, then slowly scrolled through the comments from other countries under his videos. IP location South Korea, why aren't the level 5 heroes making a move? Letting Homelander, this menace, live on Earth. IP location Iceland, there are so many level 5s in the world, one more won't make a difference. This kind of scum shouldn't be allowed to live. IP location UK, what's the rush? Homelander is a demon, and he killed Americans. I'd love for him to continue being this wicked in America. IP location Russia, the person upstairs makes a good point. IP location France, whatever, I'll surrender. What are you looking at? After practicing for a while, she found John engrossed in scrolling through his phone. Snow White's pale hands pressed down on John's shoulders as she leaned over to look. John, his view blocked by Hellish Blizzard, immediately protested, "Hey, you're interfering with my phone use. What's so interesting about this?" Blizzard retorted, "Looking at it too much will ruin your mood." "You don't understand, I'm building up my anger," John said, scrolling through his phone. "I'm too kind. If I don't build up more anger, I'm afraid I'll hesitate when I'm about to kill someone." "You, kind?" Hellish Blizzard scoffed, but John immediately flipped her over and pinned her down. "If I weren't kind, you would have died on day one." John then turned to Betty by the door, raising an eyebrow. "Want to join us? After you're done, Betty said, covering her mouth in surprise as she watched John's body begin to tremble, leaving after images. The next moment, another John Kent split off from him. "A clone technique?" Hellish Blizzard and Betty exclaimed in unison. "Of course not, just a simple trick." Both Johns grinned simultaneously. "As long as you're fast enough, one person can be used as multiple people. That's the correct way to use a speedster with a biofield. As long as your speed exceeds the speed of sound, you can easily fool the retina, and the biofield can smooth out some of the terrifying physical effects produced during movement." "Wait, I want to test my limits." John raised his hand and said. Then, to the horror of the two men, one John after another was split off, and in the blink of an eye, there were 10 Homelanders on the scene. Hey, that's enough. What are you trying to do?" Hellfire grabbed one of his arms. "Just developing a new skill." One of the Johns laughed. "I came up with this at the party the other day when I saw Red Flash talking to multiple people at super speed. As expected, a super brain is still useful. I learned it after just one glance. I'm a genius. John said with satisfaction. My current limit is handling over 200 people simultaneously, with each person no more than 10 meters apart, otherwise the image might flicker and become distorted. This skill is so useful. Now I can participate in part all by myself. John left 4 of himself in the bedroom, while the remaining 6 hummed different songs and went out to learn from the other 4 teachers. Does this mean I have to deal with 2 people at the same time? A bead of sweat rolled down Fubuki and Betty's faces as they were greeted by John's wicked smile as he walked towards them step by step. Don't come any closer. I surrender. Betty said fearfully. Give up the fight. You're all surrounded by me. John chuckled, and at the same time, screams of surprise came from the other 4 girls in the next bedroom, clearly indicating they had also fallen victim to John's cruelty. Please don't imagine what happens next, it's very explicit and violent. Meanwhile, today was also the day the United States officially held its diplomatic briefing. In a room in the White House, a large number of reporters had gathered. And if you looked closely, you would find that all of them were foreign reporters. There wasn't a single American. As the press conference began, the first question from a reporter went straight to the point. Mr. Vice President, what are your plans regarding Homelander's past crimes? A South Korean diplomatic reporter asked. No action. Yesterday, Congress passed a bill granting Homelander supreme rights in the United States. He will not be prosecuted for any act, including murder, Rodriguez announced to the world through the microphone. Wow. The audience erupted in uproar. No one expected the most powerful nation to pass such a law. Even emperors in feudal dynasties at least uttered the saying the people are more important than the ruler. Then, Mr. Vice President, will other level 5 heroes receive the same rights in the United States? A British reporter asked. No, only Homelander possesses such supreme rights in the United States. Below him, even the president cannot have such power. Furthermore, the position of president of the Superhero Association will be abolished through voting and will be directly held by Homelander, Rodriguez said slowly. This caused an uproar among the reporters. They felt that the United States had no shame, daring to do this so openly on a global live broadcast. It was utterly reckless. This only deepened their confusion. Why did Homelander have such a right? Why couldn't other heroes? Was it because Homelander was the first Tier 5 hero from America that he deserved such praise? Because Rodriguez had covered up John's punch, not many people knew about it. To people from other countries, America's action seemed utterly insane. Faced with a reporter's incessant questioning, Rodriguez grew impatient. He grabbed the microphone and said, whether Homelander is good or not is for us Americans to judge. You're not Americans, what do you know about Homelander? Chapter 84 Undercurrents. The press conference lasted half an hour. Rodriguez spoke throughout, his remarks revolving entirely around praising his homeland while warning foreign journalists to behave themselves and avoid trouble. As soon as the press conference ended, the world was in an uproar. No one, including the American public, understood what these U.S. government officials were doing or why they were so stubbornly clinging to their beliefs. In the U.S., where online comments were restricted, these people held a massive offline protest against the government's unfair regulations. Meanwhile, in other countries, the level 5 heroes were also outraged and prepared to unite and remove their leader. Since the US wouldn't give them an explanation, they were going to give the US one. Meanwhile, inside the research institute, Bruce Banner looked at the vial of reagent in Professor Odin's hand, his eyes filled with determination. Since that incident, he had been somewhat depressed and increasingly silent. I call it the Biceps King. Odin exclaimed excitedly. This is a super concentrated drug. Once injected, your heart will be more active than ever before. How effective is it? Banner asked. Just diluted to 1% and injected into a mouse. It died within 2 minutes from bleeding from all 7 orifices due to the excessive effect, Odin assured him. But you will have absolutely no problem using it, because the faster your heartbeat, the stronger you are, so you will definitely be able to withstand and perfectly absorb the effects. Banner paused for a moment before saying, thank you. Odin laughed, no need to be so polite. I'm also very curious to see what you can achieve after using the drug. That night, in a seaside villa, John finished his studies and lay on the sofa, examining the antique ring on his hand. Rodriguez, who had just finished a meeting, stood respectfully to the side and said, this was obtained from the invisible man Gavin. The user can use this ring for special teleportation. Hearing the vice president's explanation, John picked up the ring. After disappearing in the next instant, he reappeared 3 meters away in a flash. Interesting, quite a good thing. John was somewhat excited. In less than a second, he used the ring to circle the entire city. At the same time, through use, he also figured out the general usage of the ring. The frequency of each spatial movement should be linked to the speed of thought and reaction. As long as the thinking speed can keep up, it's not impossible to exceed the speed of light. Because his brain can react super fast, just using this method, through spatial displacement, he was more than 5 times faster than his normal flight speed. Of course, simple spatial movement doesn't have the destructive power of high-speed movement, since it's a jump across space without acceleration. John lay back on the sofa and turned to Rodriguez, saying, "By the way, how are Gavin and their accomplices?" They. Thinking of the guys under torture, Rodriguez subconsciously shuddered and said, "After our interrogation, they've confessed that they started World War II. Sun's right?" He was beaten into confessing everything, John thought inexplicably, then nodded in affirmation of the other's actions. "And what about Professor Otto's nuclear fusion project?" John asked. "The basic framework is set up, and it's expected to take another 2 months for equipment debugging and inspection. He asked me to give you my regards, saying the experiment will definitely be completed before the end of the year." 2 months? John nodded. "I told him I'd come to see it then, and I hope he does his best." He had acquired the PIM particles more than a month ago, now all that was missing was Otto, the final piece of the puzzle. "By the way, people on Earth probably have some complaints about me now, right?" John said, the sounds of the entire city filing his ears. It seems like they were planning some kind of big demonstration. A bead of sweat trickled down Rodriguez's ear. He whispered, "Don't worry, we'll definitely suppress them." "That would be best," John said calmly, then waved his hand lightly. "You can handle that yourself." When did Homelander become so easy to talk to? Rodriguez thought to himself, surprised. "Is there a problem?" John raised an eyebrow slightly. No, leave it to us," Rodriguez assured him. "After all, it's always best if no one dies." After the vice president left, John's gaze fell on the Venom suit hanging on the shelf, a hint of hesitation in his eyes. Venom, an alien life form, could parasitize a host, replicating and enhancing their strength, but also amplifying their emotions. John had initially thought his strength was sufficient, but it turned out that while Superman's physical resistance was extremely high, his mental state was a different story. From the moment he donned the suit, his behavior became increasingly brutal. The malice buried deep within him for the past 6 months was fully unleashed, and he killed relentlessly. This state of mind only gradually subsided in the last 2 days, mainly because Hellish Blizzard had recently joined and gone a bit too far, leaving him practically naked for 3 days straight, either at or on his way to the uncensored gathering. After 3 days of intense fighting, the original malice within him was gradually corrupted by the good deeds of the others, and during his period of reflection, he began to reconsider whether he had killed too many. His initial desire for a large-scale purge also faded. One could only say that Hellish Blizzard and the others had rendered a great service by sacrificing themselves to feed the demon. Maybe I shouldn't wear this anymore? After all, besides not being damaged, being somewhat stylish, being able to change styles at will, and increasing my strength by less than 1%, this outfit doesn't seem to have any other advantages. John hesitated more and more, finally deciding to just leave it hanging on the hanger. Just as John was hesitating, a missile, with South Korea's permission, traced a parabola across the sky and slammed into Seoul, the South Korean capital. As the missile exploded, a figure emerged unharmed from the shelling, a muscular man with an afro, wearing a black short-sleeved shirt. "Wow. That missile came fast," the man chuckled. "Level 5 hero Uvijin, what are you doing here?" A gaunt man appeared before Uvijin in an instant, frowning. "What else could I be doing?" "Of course, I'm inviting you to help me deal with Homelander," Uvijin laughed. "Your teleportation ability is quite good, it'll be very helpful to me." "Is this why you specifically asked to see me, to have a level 2 ability user like me go crazy with you?" the gaunt man said helplessly. "Of course it's not just the two of us. In fact, I was invited by someone else, and your ability can help me connect with more people." Chapter 85 Gathering. At noon, John, unusually, didn't study but continued traversing various time portals, completing missions. Meanwhile, in Seoul's capital, Yuvajin sat quietly atop the lofty World Tower, the city's tallest building, gazing at the bustling metropolis at night. The next moment, the surrounding space trembled violently, and a gaunt man appeared before Yuvajin in an instant, bringing someone with him. "Your teleportation ability is really convenient," Yuvajin remarked enviously, then looked at the man who had brought him, and this must be the British level 5 hero, the Rainbow Sword Master. Before Yuvajin stood a cat man dressed in white, with thick white fur and a large, snow-white beard. Behind this cat man, a long sword sheathed in an orange scabbard slung over his shoulder, he stood with his hands behind his back, his expression composed, saying, "Hello, just call me White Cat." White Cat spoke in fluent Mandarin, thanks to newly developed translation software that made him easily understandable. "Max, I remember there should be another level 5 in Britain, right? Didn't she come?" Yuvajin asked the gaunt man. "No, she didn't want to get involved in this mess, so she refused outright." The teleporter Max shook his head. "Fine, one more will do," Yuvajin said, somewhat annoyed, but still added, "You can continue recruiting from other countries." "She really knows how to order people around," Max complained, then vanished from his spot in an instant, the spatial tremors from the long-distance movement causing the ground beneath his feet to shatter instantly. After Max left, White Cat looked at Yuvajin and said, "Max said the opponent this time is Homelander, right?" "That's right." Yuvajin nodded and said, "Is there a problem?" "I'm just curious." White Cat frowned, his tall figure exuding a sinister aura, and said, "What is your purpose in attacking Homelander?" "For justice, of course." Yuvajin said with a fierce expression, "Homelander has committed many evils. Is there a problem with me inviting you to join me in taking them down?" "You'd better be." White Cat said with his hands behind his back, then turned his back to look at the brightly lit, bustling city in front of him. The charm of this technology was something he had never experienced before. After a long while, White Cat sighed slightly, thinking, if Rainbow Cat were here right now, that would be great. TCH, behind White Cat, Yuvajin curled his lip in disdain. He hadn't expected to actually run into a good person. The reason he came was certainly not for some so-called chivalrous cause, but simply to find an excuse to directly rule America after dealing with Homelander. After all, America is a great place, the frequency of both ability users and items appearing there is the highest, it's practically a feng shui treasure land. Soon, within 2 hours, Max had brought 7 people from other countries, each a level 5 ability user. "Is that all?" Yuvajin frowned slightly. "Hey, boss, what more do you want? There are only a little over 30 level 5 heroes in the entire world, and with you and the one behind you, 9 against 1 isn't enough, is it?" Max complained. "Alright, this number is enough." Yuvajin examined the 7 level 5 heroes, Rainbow Sword Master, Silver Fang, Azure Phoenix, Sin Buster, Straw Hat Boy, Martial Heaven Master, and Blood Key Fighting Master. "Hello, I have a request, could you possibly grant it?" The young man with the hero title Sin Buster politely raised his hand and said, "Could you let me personally kill Homelander?" "Oh?" Yuvajin looked at the young man with some surprise. According to the information revealed by the other party, the young man seems to be a native German hero who, after arriving in the other world, possessed a special ability called the Sin Liver Stream. The specific function of this ability is unknown, all that's known is that he announces the target's name and criminal record in the liver stream each time, then brutally murders them using various methods. "No problem. If we defeat Homelander and he's still alive, we can give him to you," Yuvajin said. The young man nodded without further objection. It seems like none of these guys are good people, except for the one wearing the straw hat and the White Cat, thought Silver Fang Bang, hands behind his back. At this moment, Max directly asked, "Hey, Yuvajin, you said you were invited too, so can you let the big boss out now?" "Of course, no problem, here he comes," Yuvajin gestured behind them. Everyone immediately turned around and saw 7 figures dressed in black robes with red clouds flying towards them. These people can fly, everyone sighed inwardly, finding this person unexpectedly unfamiliar. None of them had ever heard of him before. It seemed these individuals hadn't participated in the test or had been hiding their true abilities. Soon, the 7 flew in from afar, landing lightly on the railing. The leader, a man with an orange headband and a face pierced by black tree roots, spoke, "We are the 6 Paths of Pain. We haven't undergone any hero ranking yet, but according to your assessment, I should be considered level 6. Level 6? Everyone present, except for Uvajin, was astonished, staring in disbelief at the flamboyant man before them. Did this guy possess the power to obliterate a city with a single blow? This is pointless. If you're level 6, why are you calling us level 5s to fight another level 5? Criminal Buster grumbled from the side. Because Homelander is too fast, Payne said calmly. I'm not confident I can completely hold him down. I'll be the first to strike, you just need to block his path. You should all know something about Homelander's strength, Uvajin said from the side. Of course, at Mach 50, the estimated force is over 1,000,000 tons. A single punch could completely destroy everything within 100 meters of the White House. It also possesses heat vision, freezing breath, and flight capabilities, the young man from Crime Buster recounted with familiarity. In fact, he had long coveted Homelander's abilities. A month ago, he was possessed by a system from another dimension called the Death Livestream. This Livestream's ability allowed him to gain 1% to 100% of the abilities of anyone he killed with a high crime value, depending on the severity of their crime. However, only 3 people's ability slots could be used simultaneously, and switching to another ability required a 15-second cooldown. Therefore, under these limitations, the more powerful criminals hunted, the better. With this ability, he grew from an ordinary person to a level 5 ability user in just 1 month. His next target was Homelander. Chapter 86 Facing Shinra Tensei. Once I kill Homelander, my strength should reach the peak of level 5. A smile appeared on Guilty Buster's face as he glanced around at the heroes. After acquiring Homelander's abilities, I'll kill all these people, combine their abilities, and I should be able to rule the world. After Guilty Buster finished explaining his abilities, even those who already knew were astonished by Homelander's power. Putting aside everything else, just looking at his stats, most of them couldn't even match one of his abilities. Max will use his teleporter ability to send us directly to New York. I'll use some ninjutsu above his seaside villa, Payne said calmly. Everything within a 10-kilometer radius will be completely destroyed. Theoretically, this should severely injure Homelander. After that, you just need to guard all directions and prevent him from escaping. Payne said casually. I have a question. White Cat stepped forward, looking at Payne with a righteous expression. I don't doubt your ability to destroy everything within a 10-kilometer radius, but what about the civilians around you? With this attack, at least tens of thousands of people around will die. White Cat's gaze was fixed on Payne. If this guy didn't give a reasonable explanation, he would immediately attack, determined to take him down with him. The other upright figures, including Silver Fang, were also poised to strike. This newly formed anti-Homelander alliance seemed on the verge of collapse, and the atmosphere instantly plummeted. In the frozen atmosphere, Payne slowly spoke, "Don't worry about that. We'll have an outside helper to assist us." As he spoke, to the astonishment of the others, an orange halo slowly unfolded, and a black man in a tight-fitting outfit stepped forward, bowing to them. "My name is Mordo. I am acting on the orders of the Ancient One. I will pull Homelander into the mirror dimension." "What is the mirror dimension?" Silver Fang Bang asked. "A mirror image of reality, where everything is identical to reality, but no matter what damage is caused, it won't be reflected in reality," Mordo said, waving his hand, and the space in front of him seemed to shatter, forming a mirror surface covered in cracks. "You might not believe a simple explanation, so come in and experience it for yourself," he said, passing directly through the mirror surface and disappearing. The others hesitated for a moment before following him into the mirror space. In the experimental base deep in the mountains, Banner, who had asked his superiors for 3 days' leave, waved lightly to Professor Odin, carrying a shoulder bag, and said, "Then I'm off." "Okay." Odin encouraged, "Remember to use the reagent I created." "I definitely will." Banner nodded emphatically. This time, it was all or nothing. With that, he drove his off-road vehicle out of the mountains, bumping along the way towards New York. But halfway there, before he even left the mountains, a circle of light crackling with electricity suddenly unfolded from under the car, pulling him and the entire vehicle into it. "Ah!" Banner cried out as he experienced sudden weightlessness, then found himself landing smoothly with the SUV, but the surrounding scenery had drastically changed. "This is the Empire State Building?" Banner exclaimed in surprise, looking at the endless stream of vehicles in front of him. "But I didn't even board a plane to New York." At the top of the Empire State Building, the Ancient One looked down at the astonished Banner. Banner had been pulled into the mirror dimension, so their battle would no longer affect the surrounding environment. Thinking of the battle she had seen through the Time Stone, the Ancient One couldn't help but sigh. Homelander's strength was now enough to stand on his own, and she herself wouldn't have to retire for long. Meanwhile, in the mirror dimension, Mordo looked at the group in front of him and said, "Now you believe in my abilities, right? No matter how intense the fight is here, it won't affect reality, so please don't hold back." White Cat looked at the street destroyed by her fire dance whirlwind attack and the man who was missing half a head yet still walking freely, and couldn't help but marvel at the power of this ability. "Since you believe me, let's get started now," Payne said. "Now? So soon?" Max asked doubtfully. "Or do you want us level 5s to have dinner, take a bath, and go shopping with you before dealing with Homelander?" the Crimebuster teased. "Let's forget about that," Max chuckled awkwardly, then stepped forward and had the others grab him. The next moment, space trembled, and they were teleported directly from South Korea in the mirror space to outside a seaside villa in New York City. "This is Homelander's house?" At dusk, the group looked around the villa. "You'd better stay at least 5 kilometers away, or my abilities might affect you," Nagato, who had been silent the whole time, said. His body, which had been almost withered from summoning the Gato Mazo, was now able to move normally after the injection of lizard serum. Of course, due to years of not training, he couldn't match anyone here in terms of physical strength, but his greatest strength wasn't physical combat either. The next moment, the other 6 Paynes immediately turned into smoke and disappeared from the spot, while Nagato slowly floated up, rising into the sky. The others exchanged glances and immediately retreated, covering 5 kilometers in just 1 minute. "Next, it's my turn," Mordo thought to himself, before returning to reality via his suspension ring. Whoosh, time to go home. In the evening, having finished his mission to confront the Ancient One, John returned to the villa in a relaxed mood, just about to have some fun with the women, when he turned around and saw that the space behind him had shattered like a mirror. "Does this mean I have to work overtime?" John looked speechlessly at the passage leading to the mirror dimension. Trusting the Ancient One, he rushed in without any precautions. He thought the Ancient One would be waiting for him in the mirror dimension, but when he arrived, he found no one around. What's going on? John wondered. Realizing something was wrong, he immediately became alert, activating his super hearing and supervision to the maximum, and immediately heard a voice from above. "Super Shinra Tensei." High in the sky, the instant John appeared in the mirror dimension below, a loud shout came from the gate. Instantly, an immense repulsive force erupted from his body, crushing downwards. Almost the instant John looked up, the invisible repulsive force blasted the entire seaside villa apart. At that moment, John felt as if a hydrogen bomb had exploded on his face. Chapter 87 Lifting the Restrictions. 2 minutes earlier, in the mirror space, the Crimebuster watched with a smile as Nagato ascended into the sky. I should start a live stream first." The young man's body rose into the air, retreating 5 kilometers. Then, with a thought, a pale blue screen appeared before his eyes, visible only to him. After a few operations, the Crimebuster quickly accessed the Homelander data he had long coveted and set his target on him. "The Death live stream has anchored its target. Please begin the hunt as soon as possible. Once the live stream begins, it will be a fight to the death. If the target is not eliminated within 3 days, the live stream will automatically unbind from the host. Start the live stream immediately." "Yes," the Crimebuster replied without hesitation. "Please enter the live stream name." The evil culprit, the Death of Homelander, the name for the 79th Death live stream has been confirmed. Countdown is in progress. 5, 4, 3, live stream begins. As the live stream opened, the signal immediately transcended time and space, completely linking the real world and the mirror world. At least millions of netizens from all over the world immediately clicked into the live stream, and the number continued to climb to tens of millions. Then, when they realized the live stream title, the chat exploded. Holy crap, are they streaming Killing Homelander today? The streamer's awesome, finally doing something big this time. I've been annoyed with Homelander for ages, this is satisfying, but can the streamer even beat Homelander now? Why worry about that? I want to see a bloodbath. With countless comments flooding the screen, the live stream quickly switched. In the viewpoint, John, completely unaware, had just finished get off work and was about to rest when a portal to mirrored space appeared behind him, and he walked in without warning. Super Shinra Tensei, a terrifying repulsive force descended from thousands of meters above, like a hydrogen bomb exploding in midair. The seaside villa directly below was almost instantly crushed to dust by this terrifying power, and John, who happened to be in the villa. Holy crap, who the hell dropped this hydrogen bomb? John had just looked up when a powerful repulsive force slammed down on his face. In that instant, he felt every cell in his body being pulled towards the ground by this force. At least 1 billion tons of terrifying pressure acted on him, causing his thoughts to momentarily cease. But soon the force began to diminish, gradually spreading outwards. Although the explosive power was even greater, it couldn't target Homelander alone. Boom! With a massive explosion and a cloud of dust billowing into the sky, mountains, rivers, and bustling traffic all shattered under this terrifying pressure. If viewed from above, the once prosperous land below would have completely vanished, replaced by a desolate crater 10 kilometers in diameter, as if struck by a massive meteorite. Even on the edge of New York City, the terrifying power of this attack would have caused at least tens of thousands of deaths in the mirror space. OMG, what happened? Is New York destroyed? How many people must have died? Wow, rivers of blood? I'm in New York, how come I don't feel anything? Is this real? From the perspective of the livestream, all the netizens stared in shock at the crater below. Guilty Buster explained to the netizens in the livestream, in order not to harm the innocent, we dragged Homelander into the mirror space of the real world. Even if the planet is destroyed here, it will not have any effect on you. As Guilty Buster spoke, like the other heroes scattered around the edge of the crater, his eyes were full of fear. This kind of destructive power could indeed be considered level 6. In the sky, after Nagato unleashed such an attack, his face paled slightly, and then his body gradually returned to normal under the powerful self-healing ability of the lizard serum. Under such an attack, Homelander should be dead, right? White Cat looked at the ruins in front of him. As soon as he finished speaking, smoke and dust rose into the sky from where the ruins of the seaside villa had been. John, his face grim, punched a path from 100 meters underground, creating a way to the surface, before slowly levitating upwards. Looking at the red-haired punk in the sky, he said, "That firecracker you threw?" Completely unharmed, everyone stared in shock at John's muscular body, unscathed despite the torn clothes. Nagato frowned slightly. Although his attack was wide-range, its effectiveness against a single target was much weaker. But Homelander's unscathed state made him feel something was beyond his control. Only Luffy remained unmoved. Having witnessed John's attack firsthand, and unaware of his teammates' lack of information, he wondered why everyone was so surprised. Wasn't he obviously invincible? John, seeing the civilians around him seemingly oblivious to the massive bombing, and some people still hopping around with only half their bodies remaining, immediately realized they were in a mirror space. This meant that whatever he did here wouldn't affect other passers-by. Meanwhile, since these people provoked him first, it meant that even if he killed all these heroes, it wouldn't deduct from the progress bar. Hey! John, understanding the current situation, broke into a very amiable smile on his previously gloomy face. In the sky, Nagato looked down on all living beings like a god. With a puff of smoke, the 6 paths of pain immediately appeared around him, looking at Homelander and saying, "Your strength is sufficient. I'll give you a chance to become my subordinate." Soon, his words stopped, because Homelander below was actually warming up as if nothing had happened. Yes, he wasn't wearing any clothes and was stretching his body in front of everyone. What is this guy doing? Whether it was the netizens and other mirror spaces or the live broadcast room, everyone was looking at John's actions with a blank expression. Only a few people, such as Rodriguez, trembled subconsciously because the familiar feeling had returned. John's appearance now was no different from his demeanor when he attacked the White House. After stretching, John jumped up and down twice, then looked at the level 5 heroes who surrounded him and sneered, "Why are you so dramatic, you bunch of weaklings? Wait until you survive first." As soon as he finished speaking, John's figure disappeared from their sight, and a second later, under the extreme light and heat, the land within a radius of several kilometers instantly shattered into dust. Chapter 88 Earth Throw. What does 200 times the speed of sound mean? It means traveling 68,000 meters per second. In just 1 second, John could traverse the distance of 2 New York cities. At this moment, when he clearly realized that no matter how much destruction he caused here, it wouldn't matter, John completely released his seal. The biofield, which he always kept on carefully to prevent too much damage, was immediately withdrawn, and he began to go berserk without restraint. Under the super reaction, The level 5 heroes around him, as well as the self-proclaimed godlike punk in the sky, all seemed to freeze. John ignored these wooden figures, lightly pushed off with his legs, and the terrifying force of billions of tons acted on the ground, directly propelling his body into the sky, and then speeding away in the air. 0.001 seconds after John took off, the level 5 heroes who were surrounding John finally reacted, their eyes filled with doubt. Where's he? But after their thoughts had been processed for a moment, 0.1 seconds had passed, and John's figure was already several kilometers away. What they were about to worry about wasn't Homelander, but the immense destructive force generated by his leap. The next moment, under everyone's wary and uneasy gaze, a terrifying destructive force, like a hydrogen bomb explosion, spread outwards after John's seemingly effortless leap, which traveled at 200 times the speed of sound and possessed the force of billions of tons. The surrounding superheroes, just as they were about to retreat, were already being assaulted by the cataclysmic shockwave. The super-powerful blast wave, exceeding 1,000,000 tons in force, struck them. King Feng, Wushin Master, and White Cat, among other weaker level 5 heroes, immediately coughed up blood. Then, like the others, they were swept away by the blast wave through the billowing dust, traveling several miles. What they were facing now was merely the massive aftershock of John's jump. In fact, John hadn't used his full strength in a long time, even he didn't know how strong he truly was. Even when he fought the Hulk, creating 200 or 300 meters of rubble, it was estimated that he only used about 2% of his full power. Now, in this mirror space, he could finally stop suppressing his emotions and unleash his full power to see just how far he was capable. In his eyes, Nagato's so-called level 6 and the so-called level 5 of those guys like White Cat were all utter bullshit, full of exaggeration. To borrow the words of a certain old man Zhao, you dare call yourself level 5, 6? Their so-called street-shattering and city-shattering feats were all the result of long-accumulated power unleashing their strongest attacks. In John's mind, if you can't casually unleash an attack that causes level 5 destructive power, then you're just a watered-down level 5, and the same goes for level 6. The reason John always considered himself level 5 was because someone with his physical talent was always at a disadvantage in debates, and the only powerful move he could use was to punch others. But this created a strange phenomenon. Even though they were both level 5, he could kill his peers like slaughtering dogs, and easily defeat those watered-down level 6s like Thin Veil. Above New York City in the mirror world, John soared freely with all his might. With a mere glide across the ground, a massive chasm, a kilometer wide and piercing through the entire city of New York, was formed within seconds. New York City deserves a memento, John thought to himself, stroking his chin with amusement as he sped along. The next moment, despite traveling at 60 kilometers per second, John's body, without slowing down at all, made a sharp 36-degree turn, veering back towards New York City. Then came a second, a third, and a fourth turn. In less than 3 seconds, John completed 4 turns over New York City before stopping, then soaring into the sky to admire his masterpiece. Meanwhile, in the live stream, viewers couldn't keep up with John's incredible speed, only seeing a blurry image from his perspective on their computer screens. As if to accommodate the viewers, the system thoughtfully shifted the view away from John, offering a bird's-eye view from high above. Then everyone saw a yellowish-brown line of dust slice straight across the face of New York City, followed by a second, then a third. Seconds later, as the dust began to spread, everyone was shocked to discover that over 1,000 square kilometers of New York City was being bisected by a perfectly regular pentagram. If someone had measured it on site, they would have found that each side of this pentagram was over 30 kilometers long, 1 kilometer wide, and 100 meters deep. The area of destruction caused by this single act far exceeded that of Pain's Shinra Tensei. At least 2 million New York City residents from the mirror world were killed. John looked at his crew drawing below with satisfaction, then decided to try something else. He swooped down and landed on a flat area in the suburbs, gently bent over, and plunged his right hand into the ground as if stabbing tofu. Then, with a sudden burst of force from his right arm, a bio-force field spread out, and in the next instant, an irregularly shaped clot of mud, 1,000 meters long, 1,000 meters wide, 500 meters high, and weighing 600 or 700 million tons, was violently ripped from the ground. Huff. John, holding the clot of earth high, was a little unsteady on his feet, feeling that the thing in his hand was still quite heavy, and he almost fell over. Compared to the clod of Earth, which was thousands of meters long on each side, John's 1.8-meter height seemed so small, like an ant carrying an elephant. But at this moment, he really did it. But he still felt it wasn't enough. John took a deep breath, his right arm suddenly exerted force, and his palm, which was stuck in the soil, squeezed hard. Kwang, a terrifying force was evenly applied to the clod of Earth through a bioforce field. Crack, 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 crack. In a series of chilling squeezing sounds, everyone in the live broadcast room watched in astonishment as the huge clod of Earth gradually shrank inward. 1,000 meters, 900 meters, 800 meters, 700 meters. After several seconds of compression, the volume of this oil had shrunk by about 40%, but its density was now comparable to that of steel. Feeling it was about time, John strode forward, carrying 600 or 700 million tons of earth on his right shoulder, heading towards New York City. Boom, boom, boom. With each step John took, even with his biofield activated, the ground trembled like a magnitude 5 or 6 earthquake. Gradually, he began to run up, and after a heart-pounding beat, feeling the time was right, John unhesitatingly tossed the earth ball forward. John laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, take this earth throw. I know it's not good to end the chapter abruptly, so I'm posting it early today. The next chapter is coming soon. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. One man destroys the city. At this moment, in New York City, White Cat clutched his chest, his wound slowly healing under the lizard serum. Yes, as a reward for being a level 5 hero, these heroes had all been injected with lizard serum, making them virtually invincible unless their hearts and heads were blown apart. Even so, King Fang and Wushan Master were still killed in the aftershocks of that instant. How can he be so strong? He's actually level 5, the same level 5 as us, White Cat thought in shock. If he hadn't been so composed, he would have cursed. The other heroes were also shocked, watching Homelander soar freely over New York City. Every instant, a powerful impact no less than the previous one erupted, and they couldn't even withstand the aftershocks. For a moment, they were in complete disarray, looking at Nagato hovering in the sky, only to find that he was just as bewildered as they were. Just as John had thought, Nagato, who could only unleash a powerful attack that took tens of seconds to build up and was only at the level of Zarbamba, was a force to be reckoned with. He was no match for John, a super athlete who could casually unleash hundreds of level 5 attacks. His super Shinra Tensei could destroy a 10-kilometer radius in seconds, but John could traverse 60 kilometers in a single second. Unless ambushed or stood still, he couldn't even touch John. Watching the smoke and fire engulf New York City, they were the ones who had stormed in, yet they could only stand there dumbfounded as bystanders, unable even to follow Homelander's lead. The reason they were just watching was because, in Homelander's eyes, these level 5 and 6 heroes were as weak as ants, easily crushed with a single step. There was no need to bother dealing with them, they might accidentally crush them with the aftershocks while having fun. Just then, the crime buster, who had been watching Homelander's livestream, was shocked and shouted to the others, "Get out of the way. A meteorite is coming." Meteorite, everyone was startled, instinctively looking up, only to find the sky clear blue, with nothing there. No time to explain, it was thrown by Homelander, the crime buster hurriedly said, then used his telekinesis to envelop those around him and fly away. He wasn't being kind enough to save these people for free, rather, if John had had his fun and subconsciously remembered them, more people meant a greater chance of survival. The next moment, those enveloped by his telekinesis saw a gigantic rock, hundreds of meters long, arc through the air before hurtling towards downtown New York City at 2 to 3 times the speed of sound. At that moment, they realized that John wasn't fighting them. If they had to find an opponent, John's enemy was the city itself, or rather, the planet beneath his feet. Imagine the destructive power of a meteorite weighing hundreds of millions of tons, hurtling towards a city at several times the speed of sound. Unlike Shinra Tensei, while Shinra Tensei and Zarbamba had similar crater-like effects, Shinra Tensei possessed no additional destructive force besides its repulsive force. John's meteorite, however, was different. Upon impact, it created a massive crater nearly 10 kilometers deep, and the energy released in all directions was equivalent to hundreds of little boys exploding simultaneously. If it had struck directly, the blast radius would have destroyed most of New York City. John crossed his arms, admiring his masterpiece. But his expression changed slightly, and he asked in surprise, "Is this even possible?" In his vision, within New York City, Banner, inside the mirror space, watched a meteorite hurtling towards him. He took a deep breath and, without hesitation, plunged the prepared potion into his heart. In an instant, a deafening roar erupted from Banner's enlarged, greener mouth. An unprecedented rage made his heart pound wildly. Within a second, Banner's heart rate reached over 200 beats per minute. An ordinary person would have died from heart failure due to the rapid heartbeat. But he was different. As his heart rate increased, his physical strength also surged. With a combined effect, his size instantly grew to 15 meters tall, and at that moment, he barely qualified to arm wrestle with John. "What is that?" Hearing the roar, the heroes looked in astonishment into the distance. They saw a gigantic green monster leap up, shattering the ground within a 5-kilometer radius in an instant. Roar! The Hulk roared, clenching his fist to meet the massive meteorite in front of him, gathering his strength, and then swinging it. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the massive meteorite, powerful enough to destroy a city, exploded instantly. Amidst the flying debris, everyone stared blankly at the scene, speechless, as if witnessing the arrival of a mythical titan. Some viewers in the live stream recognized the creature and immediately commented, "Isn't that the ex-husband? I remember now, he's the one Homelander cheated on with. Tisk tisk tisk, that's pretty awesome. Does this mean I've become stronger after being cuckolded? The person upstairs is hilarious. The more cuckolded you are, the stronger you are, right?" At this moment, because Homelander was involved, coupled with this world-destroying power, almost 100 million netizens were watching online simultaneously. Nick Fury, who was watching the video, immediately asked the agents around him, how come Bruce went there too? And how did he become so strong? Wasn't it supposed to be a mirror space completely isolated from reality? The agent next to him quickly pulled up Bruce Banner's information and replied, "Director, Professor Banner took 2 days off today and also bought a plane ticket to New York. But logically, he should be on the plane right now." Nick Fury's heart was filled with uncertainty. He really didn't expect that Bruce Banner, who is usually only a level 4 hero, would show a destructive power no less than Homelander's at this moment. In New York City, the instant Banner shattered the meteorite, John withdrew his arm, a smirk playing on his lips. "1 is fine, how about 3? At that moment, the clouds were pierced. 3 meteorites, no less large than the previous one, hurtled towards New York City. The Hulk, his eyes glowing with a bloodshot red, leaped high into the air once more, throwing a powerful punch at the meteorites. But he had barely smashed one when the other 2 followed, slamming into his mid-air figure. In the towering explosions and intense heat, New York City was ultimately destroyed. Chapter 90 Level 7 Impact. Ho ha ho ha. Looking at the city shrouded in dust before him, John laughed like a villain, feeling incredibly awesome. John was still naked, but the viewers in the live stream were speechless. They could only say that awesome people can command respect even without clothes. A few seconds later, John stopped laughing and used his supervision to look at the city, mostly destroyed. In the very center of the crater, the Hulk survived the attack, though his size had shrunk to 12 meters and was still shrinking. That's right, the potion created by Professor Odin, theoretically capable of providing hours of euphoria, was completely absorbed by the Hulk in less than a minute. It was precisely because of this rapid absorption that the Hulk could unleash such terrifying power in such a short time. "Oh dear, my ex-husband, he's not lasting enough," John thought to himself. He'd been hoping for a good fight, but his opponent had already given up before he even had a chance to exert himself. "What a disappointment," John muttered, glancing around to find the other level 5 heroes surprisingly resilient, having survived the attack and now fleeing rapidly towards the outskirts of New York City. In the sky, the self-proclaimed god stared blankly at the city engulfed in flames. "Nagato, huh?" Suddenly, a mocking voice came from behind Nagato. Turning around, he saw Homelander hovering 100 meters behind him. In a self-defense-driven reflex, he almost immediately summoned the 6 paths of pain, with Deva Path and Nagato unleashing Shinra Tensei almost immediately. But this usually invincible ninjutsu was like a gentle breeze to Homelander. The pulling force of thousands of tons didn't even budge John's body, Only his black hair fluttered in the wind due to the repulsive force. The Azure Path immediately raised its arm, launching 5 or 6 miniature hydrogen bombs obtained from this world, striking the unsuspecting John. As a massive fireball, large enough to engulf an area of 100 meters in diameter, passed by, a chilling aura approaching absolute zero erupted from its center, freezing all 6 paths of pain with a single sweep. Had enough fun? John flew out from the center of the fireball, speaking to Nagato in a tone as if talking to a child. In John's hand, he held a rope, tying 7 or 8 people to it like dogs. These were the level 5 heroes who had tried to escape the city, captured in less than a second. At Mach 200, flying at full speed, circumnavigating the Earth would only take 10 minutes. In just 5 minutes, he could pinpoint any corner of the planet for a precise strike. Therefore, these level 5 heroes who had escaped the city, thinking they had survived, were merely people John didn't want to kill for the time being. He could deal with them whenever he felt like it. What do you want to do? Having exhausted all his abilities, Nagato no longer felt the confidence of a god. Looking at Homelander, who was completely exposed yet didn't seem out of place at all, Nagato suddenly felt like he was the one who was naked. What do you mean what I want to do? I'm the victim here. John, leading the heroes around Nagato, sneered, weren't you so cocky just now? Why did you stop? Then, mimicking Nagato's tone, John said with a straight face, your skills are up to par. I'll give you a chance to become my subordinate. Even he couldn't help but laugh after the performance. That's hilarious. You'll definitely have a place in the circus. Everyone watching Homelander's performance via livestream, seeing Nagato's face as black as the bottom of a pot, couldn't help but think, this is utterly devastating. Seeing Nagato unable to utter a word for a long time, John grinned broadly and said, I want to play a game with you. Although you attacked the me, I'm kind-hearted. I'll only attack you once more. If you survive, I'll forgive and forget. How about it? John said. I agree, the crime buster answered almost instantly. And what about you guys? John looked at the others. I don't agree. Luffy roared, but the next moment he was already submerged in several kilometers of seawater. Anyone else? John snapped his fingers, and after receiving their affirmation, he nodded in satisfaction. Very good, now let's talk about the rules. John clapped his hands and said, there's only one rule, and that is that you are absolutely not allowed to leave this city. As soon as he finished speaking, John disappeared from the spot, and the bio-force field attached to the rope was instantly removed. Where is he? Silver Fang Bang, who had broken free of the rope, immediately asked, and then everyone's eyes turned to the crime buster, because his ability was still locked on Homelander. He's still moving rocks, probably similar to the attack just now, the crime buster said slowly through the live stream. That's good. If we could dodge it before, we can definitely dodge it again. Blood Key Daozong breathed a sigh of relief, but the next moment he saw Sin Buster's expression suddenly change. This time, it's twice the size of the previous one. The next moment, everyone looked up sharply, because even they saw it, a gigantic rock, a kilometer in size, was slowly being lifted into the sky by Homelander and heading towards outer space at several times the speed of sound. What does he want to do? White Cat looked at the giant meteorite gradually shrinking in the air, his face beneath his fur turning even paler. To send the meteorite into outer space, and then, through Earth's own weight, Sin Buster's face had turned completely pale. Destroy humanity. At this moment, thinking of his arrogant thought of killing Homelander, he wished he could go back and slap himself twice. Why did he have to meddle? Now he'd be lucky to escape with his life. How is that possible? This meteorite is only 1 kilometer long. At most, it could wipe out one United States. To destroy human society, it would need to be at least 10 kilometers long. In the livestream, watching the rock being lifted by Homelander and passing through the stratosphere, a netizen immediately raised a question. What extent can this meteorite achieve? In reality, Rodriguez looked at the scientist beside him. Theoretically, it should only affect the human population of one continent, but, the scientist said, according to a rating system, this attack might even reach Level 7? Chapter 91 One strike destroys the world. Level 7. Rodriguez took a deep breath, beginning to feel grateful for his appeasing behavior over the past few days. It only takes a little time to easily destroy a country and then affect the survival of an entire continent's population. Moreover, Homelander could use such an attack once, and then countless times. It doesn't matter, Homelander is on our side, Rodriguez said with a relieved smile. Now, it's the other countries that should be worried. Just as Rodriguez said, Homelander's actions had already seriously impacted the entire world order. At this moment, except for some underdeveloped countries that were too backward to react, the leaders of all developed and developing countries were discussing how to deal with Homelander. Of course, not with force, but how to ease tensions with Homelander. They had discovered that their citizens had offended Homelander quite badly online. The internet was filled with various mockeries and ridicule of him. Previously, due to a misjudgment of Homelander's strength, they hadn't paid much attention. After all, their countries weren't without level 5 ability users. But now reality was starkly telling them that there was still a slight difference between level 5 and level 5. Some radical countries even proposed at the meeting, "Officials, the situation is urgent, let's kill those citizens who are spouting nonsense online." Of course, most officials couldn't go that far, and only considered sending women and money as bribes, then launching a large-scale internet censorship campaign to delete all malicious comments about Homelander online. Yes, these methods were exactly what Rodriguez had done a few days ago, simply copying what others had done. In fact, these countries already hated the United States to the core, and they hated this vice president even more. If you had told us Homelander was this powerful, wouldn't it have been better for us to kneel down and acknowledge Homelander as our father? It's not a shameful thing. Why did we have to make it like this? Putting aside these people's ulterior motives, John had already passed through the atmosphere, and after several minutes of boosting, he was about to successfully reach outer space. "No, we can't stay in the city anymore," Blood Key Daozong said with sweat dripping down his forehead and his face full of fear. This power was equivalent to Dao Shang's full-force attack. Such a devastating attack was far too intense for them. Staying in the city meant certain death. So, taking advantage of Homelander's push into outer space, he didn't hesitate to run away. Sinbuster had the same idea, but the thought had barely formed when he noticed a meteorite's ascent in the live stream slowed down. With a deafening roar, everyone froze, looking towards the Blood Key Daozong's location. In the billowing dust, a massive crater hundreds of meters wide was clearly visible, and in the center lay the headless Blood Key Daozong. At John's speed, it would only take 2 seconds to return from 100 kilometers away in space to the ground. Looking at the Blood Key Daozong's remains, everyone understood this was Homelander's warning. This was the consequence of not following the rules. Staying in the city to carry the meteorite offered a slim chance of survival, but escaping meant certain death. Meanwhile, in the sky, John's veins bulged as he propelled the meteorite into outer space. Without an air medium, the meteorite, which had only reached 2 or 3 times the speed of sound, began to accelerate. 5 times, 10 times, 15 times. After propelling the meteorite in a large circle in outer space, taking a full 3 minutes, John, with all his might, had brought this multi-billion-ton meteorite to a terrifying speed of 60 times the speed of sound. That should be enough, John muttered to himself. This was the first time he had ever exerted himself so intensely. "Earth, here I come." The next moment, John pushed the meteorite towards the atmosphere. The instant it touched the atmosphere, the intense heat generated by the friction between the supersonic meteorite and the air immediately raised the meteorite's surface temperature to 20,000 degrees Celsius, making it 100,000 times brighter than sunlight. At that moment, the entire northern and western hemispheres, including the United States, were completely illuminated by blinding light, and the eyes of billions of people outdoors in the mirror world were completely blinded. Then, carrying boundless light and heat, John propelled the meteorite toward the already ruined New York. "Your Excellency, I think I miscalculated." In reality, the intense white light from the computer screen in front of him made Rodriguez squint. Then he asked, "Where did you go wrong?" "Actually, the power of this attack should have been even greater," the scientist said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "How so?" "Most meteorites, although they can reach speeds of tens of kilometers per second in outer space, quickly slow down after entering the atmosphere, reaching only about 10 kilometers per second upon impact. But this one, although not particularly large in size, has been propelled by Homelander. Its speed far exceeds that of similar meteorites. In terms of destructive power, I think it's comparable to the Chicxulub meteorite." "You mean the one that wiped out the dinosaurs tens of millions of years ago?" Rodriguez was astonished. He might not understand the specific figures, but this example made perfect sense. That's right, equivalent to 100 trillion tons of TNT, or 7 billion Hiroshima atomic bombs detonated simultaneously, the expert said slowly, adjusting his glasses. If it hits the ground, I have no doubt that its power could even reach level 8, causing powerful damage to the planet's surface. How, truly a world-destroying blow. Rodriguez calmly took a sip of the tea beside him and said. To him, level 7 and level 8 seemed to make no difference, it was all the same, death. In the mirror world, as the meteorite touched the atmosphere, merely reflecting the brightness of the entire sky, these level 5 heroes disregarded the rules of the game and unhesitatingly began to run away. But they tragically discovered that they couldn't even move. With the meteorite's descent, even before reaching the ground, New York City below was instantly crushed by the immense pressure from the increased energy. These heroes, usually as light as a feather, now felt unable to even move their feet. Nagato, who called himself a god, was the weakest, his knees deeply embedded in the ground, his body in a kneeling position, struggling against a pressure with a demonic expression. As the pressure increased, kinetic energy was converted into heat energy, and the once calm air instantly rose to thousands of degrees Celsius. Then, boom! In that instant, everything within a 500-kilometer radius was reduced to ashes. In that instant, beneath the meteorite, all beings were equal. Meanwhile, netizens in the real world, through the live stream's outer space perspective, clearly saw blindingly bright spots spreading rapidly across this blue planet. At that moment, a single thought simultaneously crossed their minds, like a demon descending from heaven, truly a god of war on Earth. The following is a separate, unrelated calculation. I just calculated that, in the Hengcheo template, the protagonist's arm strength alone should be 1,000,000 tons, then increasing tenfold by going to the sun would be 10 million tons, and after the progress bar is full, it would increase 100-fold again, which should be 1,000,000,000 tons. After a few days, the single arm strength would reach about 1.7 billion tons, and then using the strength of the whole body to support the meteorite would reach 10 billion tons. This calculation should be correct. Chapter 92 Guyi, I am no longer your match. In the mirror world, 10 minutes after the meteorite impact reached Earth, a massive crater, nearly 200 kilometers in diameter and 3 kilometers deep, was completely formed, centered on New York City. Thick dust filled the sky, blocking sunlight and threatening to drag the entire planet into a silent, dead night. But before that, existing species had to endure countless earthquakes and tsunamis, as well as a rain of meteorites ejected from the crater. In New York City, the epicenter, the temperature was now over 1,000 degrees Celsius. In this area that should have been barren, a figure stood in the center of the crater, his chest heaving. I'm almost at my limit, John gasped, his body slightly exhausted from pushing so hard. Even he, having ingested a small portion of the meteorite's impact, had suffered minor damage from the impact. But it didn't matter, he could recover after a short time in outer space. Earth was currently in a state similar to nuclear winter, where sunlight couldn't penetrate, otherwise he would have recovered long ago. John uttered a surprised sound as he prepared to leave. Because he could sense that there were other people alive besides him in New York City. Who's so powerful? Curious, John teleported in front of the other person, only to see a man with a charred body and large sections of broken bones buried in the ground, barely breathing. John vaguely remembered this guy, his name was something like Crimebuster. He was the first one to agree to participate in his game, so it seemed he came prepared. He survived, Crimebuster thought thankfully. Luckily, he had killed enough enemies and possessed hundreds of different abilities. After learning John's attack method, he didn't hesitate to use his 3-second intangibility ability to dodge the first wave of fatal attacks. At the same time, due to his strong physique and self-healing ability, he managed to withstand this round of damage in the ground. Just as he was secretly rejoicing, John instantly appeared in front of him, looked at the man who was about to heal, and raised his foot to completely crush him. Wait! Sinbuster cried out in terror, raising his hand. I survived your first attack. You can't go back on your word. What's the point of talking about integrity with a heretic like you? Don't you know what it means to eradicate evil completely? John sneered, and the ground within a kilometer radius shattered instantly. Everyone watching the live stream broke out in a cold sweat, terrified by Homelander's actions. With Sinbuster's death, his system immediately collapsed, but the anchor on John didn't disappear immediately. The live stream wouldn't end for another 3 days. Standing beneath a crimson sky illuminated by flames, John, about to shout as he finished everything, was about to speak when an orange halo appeared before him. Stepping into the halo, looking at the familiar furnishings of Kamartaj, John wondered, what's so great about this mirror world? From his perspective, he could clearly see the disaster he had caused on the other side of Earth, but it would take some time for it to reach here. You're capable of handling things on your own now. The Ancient One stood up, still in her familiar yellow robe, smiling at Homelander. Standing before a familiar face, John, who had been quite carefree, couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable, urging, "That's another matter, let's get my..." Before he could finish, the Ancient One waved her hand, and the venom suit that had been hanging in reality was delivered to him. Old schemer, John thought to himself. He hadn't even finished speaking, and this guy already knew what was going to happen next. He was obviously using his precognition all the time. Wasn't that tiring? John quickly put on the suit, a hint of violence flashing in his previously clear eyes. The next moment, he sat down opposite the Ancient One and began making tea, saying, "Thank you for this." If the crime busters were here, the moment they saw the Ancient One, they would immediately understand the truth and start cursing in their hearts. "You're trying to set me up, aren't you?" "It's just my duty," the Ancient One said. In the future she saw, without her involvement, the anti-Homelander team would immediately fall apart. Those who questioned Nagato's use of Super Shinra Tensei in New York, such as White Cat, Master Wushin, and Silver Fang, would be killed by pain. Only Luffy could temporarily escape. Then, leading the remaining villainous group, Nagato teleported to New York and unleashed Shinra Tensei on John's city center in reality. Due to the suddenness of the attack, Betty and the other women were instantly annihilated by Shinra Tensei. Even knowing it was a prearranged event, what awaited humanity was still a thoroughly enraged Homelander. What followed was a reenactment. The apocalyptic meteorite appeared in reality, and 99% of humanity would be wiped out within the next few months. Only a few people recognized by John would survive. So, when the Ancient One said it was her duty, she wasn't joking. If she hadn't intervened, humanity would have been wiped out by Homelander. The content of their conversation was broadcast live, and Rodriguez and the others were surprised but not entirely unexpected upon seeing the mysterious appearance of the Ancient One. Because they already knew that John was fighting criminals around the world through various orange portals, they only now realized it was the Ancient One who was behind it. Conversely, they were quite interested in the emotional fluctuations John and the Ancient One exchanged. This man, who usually treated them like royalty, was now showing signs of embarrassment and displeasure, yet refrained from attacking. John, silently brewing tea, felt increasingly satisfied thinking about his initial prediction and said, "I'm no longer your match." Huh? John paused, looking up. "Hey, you're not kidding me, are you?" 32,421 times, the Ancient One suddenly said. "That's the number of times I died at your hands in the last 3 seconds, and that number is still rising. Of those, I only managed to escape from you 62 times, the Ancient One said with extreme rationality, as if she hadn't died herself. Sorry," John said, his expression faltering before apologizing. And with these words, in the future the Ancient One saw, she was finally spared from being killed by John. In fact, as their relationship had eased, John hadn't attacked her without reason in the future seen through the time stone for a long time. But this time, after what the Ancient One said, John suddenly became eager to try. And then, in every future he saw just now, John attacked her. It's only a few hours later than yesterday. How come people are spreading rumors that I'm going to abandon the project? I haven't even stopped working. Chapter 93 The Ancient One's Infinite Premonition. When did you first notice John? Looking at the somewhat ashamed John before her, the Ancient One fell into recollection. She first saw him during a rehearsal about half a year ago, when she was worried about the impending changes. To prepare for the future crisis, she had been frantically using the time stone to foresee the future for over 20 years. Besides at least 100,000 short rehearsals daily, she also had a fixed 10-year-long rehearsal every day. With each observation of the future, she grew increasingly pessimistic. Because before the extra-dimensional energy was generated, the results of each rehearsal were largely the same, all following a fixed rhythm and a fixed plot. Faced with the impending Great Terror, no one was capable of shouldering the burden, not even Doctor Strange. Then, during a long rehearsal about half a year ago, after 9 years in Kamartaj, a deafening roar came from the Himalayas. Filled with curiosity and investigation, she stepped out of the room and saw a man carrying a snow-capped mountain of the Himalayas on one arm, flying towards her. The massive mountain range now blotted out the sun's rays. The man, his face fierce, looked down at her and said, "Ancient One, right? Hand over the time stone. Don't even think about running away, or all of humanity will, boom. Trust me, I have the ability," the man emphasized, seemingly to prove it. He lightly tapped the trillion-ton snow mountain on his arm. "Who are you?" Ancient One wasn't intimidated. Instead, her eyes lit up as she looked at the man she'd never seen before and asked, deciding to prolong this rehearsal. "John Kent," the man said, his eyes filled with impatience, "don't try to stall me. Hand it over now, or I won't hesitate to destroy Earth before Thanos arrives." After voluntarily handing over the time stone, John didn't linger, but began his march to world domination. One nation after another was easily destroyed or enslaved beneath his feet. After ruling this planet, his gaze soon turned to the stars. In just 10 years, the Milky Way galaxy was completely conquered, and all forces that stood in his way were utterly destroyed. When the Ancient One saw John again, he sat on a throne made of a million shrunken stars, tilting his head to look at her. "You can leave now," John said to the Ancient One. "Why?" the Ancient One asked. He had summoned her, only to dismiss her with a single glance. "Because what I wanted to know has already been obtained from your mind." John's eyes were incredibly deep as he looked at the Ancient One and slowly said, "Creator of this world, everything in the universe is nothing but a false illusion you created using the time stone. My pain and confusion are all thanks to you." "What did you say?" the Ancient One exclaimed in shock, wanting to ask further, but he merely snapped his fingers, and an orange portal instantly swallowed her. When she regained her senses, she was back in Kamartaj. After that, during this rehearsal, the Ancient One never saw John again, because 3 days later, Galactic Emperor John Kent completely disappeared, and the vast empire he had built vanished in the blink of an eye. Back in reality, she consulted countless sources and finally found the answer in the Book of Vishanti. That is, the time stone's ability to foresee the strength of things has an upper limit. If an entity's own power is too great, even if it is merely a fiction, the time stone cannot depict even a fraction of its true nature. The Ancient One understood this. It was definitely John Kent attempting to break through his own power level during a rehearsal after realizing his identity. Whether he succeeded or failed, he completely disappeared within the rehearsal. Realizing this, the Ancient One was certain that John Kent was the target she was looking for. Her next task was to observe and guide him, enabling John to protect all of humanity. In another rehearsal, she tried to approach him. John, who had just lost his system during the rehearsal and was panicking, stepped forward and said, "I am the Ancient One. Would you like to learn magic from me?" But she was met only with a punch from John filled with rage. "So you're the one who took a cut from my system?" This rehearsal completely collapsed, but the Ancient One was not discouraged. For her, there were still many opportunities. Soon, after 39 rehearsals with John, she began to understand that after each rehearsal, John would lose a precious thing called the system. And whenever the system disappeared, she would appear, naturally causing John to feel anger towards her. The rest was simple. After each rehearsal, she wouldn't appear immediately, but rather delay for a while, clearing herself of suspicion, and then reappear 6 months later. Sure enough, when she offered to take him as her apprentice, the unsuspecting John immediately bowed and prostrated himself. As she predicted, John's talent was indeed exceptional. Within just 5 weeks, he memorized all the tens of thousands of spellbooks stored in Kamartaj, and then, he refused to use any magic without hesitation. "Teacher, this borrowed power is too flawed, with serious loopholes. I appreciate your kindness, but I will pursue my own power," John said, leaving amidst a sonic boom. Only 7 years later, a weather John returned to her, again requesting to borrow the power of the time stone. She agreed without hesitation, only requesting to witness his growth. Then she saw John, relying on his ability to extend time, constantly borrow from the future to grow stronger, at an unstoppable and terrifying rate of improvement. Afterwards, realizing he was virtual, John didn't hesitate to deliberately destroy the universe, forcibly ending the rehearsal amidst the destruction of all things. Returning to her thoughts, looking at Homelander before her, the Ancient One, who had watched him grow from weakness to strength thousands of times, was certain that this was the key to ensuring the continued existence of human civilization in the future. Because in each rehearsal, In each future, John's growth rate accelerated. Compared to the previous 10 rehearsals, he had now surpassed the progress of the previous 3 years in just 6 months. Now, even the Ancient One couldn't be sure how far John would go given a few more years. However, the severity of his personality was truly giving her a headache. "John, will you inherit my mantle?" The Ancient One asked this question for the first time in reality, but John immediately refused. "Forget it, you can do this back-breaking work yourself, I can't be bothered." Chapter 94 The King of Torture. Just like his previous choice in the future, John refused her invitation again. "However, I am still somewhat interested in your time stone and the tens of thousands of spellbooks here," John said after finishing his tea. The Ancient One nodded without hesitation. "I still have a use for the time stone, but you can freely browse the spellbooks." As soon as she finished speaking, John disappeared for 3 seconds before reappearing. "Okay, memorize them all." As he spoke, John gently rubbed his slightly throbbing head. Memorizing the contents of tens of thousands of books in 3 seconds was difficult even for him. He would need half a day to understand them afterward. "Thanks," John said again, still somewhat surprised by the Ancient One's actions. As she said, the Ancient One was no longer a match for him now, yet she sat before him completely unguarded, practically handing her life over to him. If John had any murderous intent at this moment, at this distance, the Ancient One would almost certainly have been killed and the stone taken. "It's nothing." Guyi gently shook her head and slowly said, "Now that you're capable enough to shoulder this responsibility, I think I can retire." Hey, what's going on?" John tapped the table, glaring at Guyi with displeasure. "Are you trying to pass the burden of protecting Earth onto someone else again, just like you did with your apprentice, suddenly dying? What about your apprentice from a few years later? Aren't you going to teach him?" John asked. "That's my final mission. The future of humanity is in your hands." Before Guyi could finish speaking, John disappeared before her eyes. "Crazy, let whoever wants to do this do it." Dozens of kilometers away, John muttered. He casually took out a swivel ring he had borrowed, and based on the knowledge he had just memorized, he waved his hand lightly. The space between the mirror image and reality immediately tore open, revealing the appearance of his own villa. Stepping out of the portal, John saw Hellfire looking at him with her arms crossed. Just as he was about to pick her up, sensing what Homelander was about to do, Fubuki said coldly, "You're being monitored." "Monitored?" John asked, puzzled. His gaze swept across the entire city, and seeing the content of the live streams, he immediately understood his situation. "So, I just destroyed the Earth naked, and hundreds of millions of people saw it." Thinking this, John subconsciously tightened his armor, his original plan to continue the uncensored battle abruptly interrupted. "I wonder how long this live stream will last. Don't tell me it'll go on forever," John thought, smiling as he greeted everyone in the live stream. "Hi, everyone." The next moment, the live stream, which had been flooded with comments, fell silent. 90% of the viewers instantly dropped their comments. Under John's gaze, everyone felt fear. "So indifferent, do you not like to speak?" John said with a smile. "How about this? To encourage everyone to speak, I'll randomly select a country with the lowest participation rate and send them on a trip there." Upon hearing this, the viewers on the other side of the screen, after a few seconds of considering John's words, immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Sending Homelander on a trip? Forget it. In an instant, the previously silent chat exploded with generic congratulations like "Long live Homelander." Satisfied with the positive reactions in the live stream, John began to think about what he should do next to torment these viewers. After all, since he couldn't play some fun games with Hellish Blizzard and the others because of this livestream, how could he let these people in the livestream be idle? He definitely had to find something for them to do. After a moment's thought, John's eyes lit up instantly. Looking at the viewers in the livestream, he said, "I've got a really good idea for the show. Let's do a Don't Laugh challenge." Without hesitation, John ran into an internet cafe. Under the horrified gaze of the cafe owner watching the live stream, he rapidly created 100 versions of himself, each occupying a computer, and started searching for funny videos. Soon, John pointed to one of the videos and burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, this video is hilarious. This joke is brilliant." Then, all the after-images of John, created at lightning speed, simultaneously stared at the camera in the live stream, asking in confusion, "I laughed, aren't you laughing? Don't you like laughing? One Homelander was terrifying enough, but now, being stared at by hundreds of Homelanders at once sent a chill down the spines of the viewers, who then hurriedly typed ha 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 comments in unison. Hey, don't just laugh. Can someone explain the joke? John said, pointing at the video on the screen. You son of a bitch, everyone was cursing under their breath. This was going too far. Millions immediately left the live stream, deciding not to watch. Could they at least avoid it? Because this was a system ability of the Evil Buster, it could display the real-time online number of viewers. Seeing the number plummet, John couldn't stand it. How could he torture people if they left? He immediately put on a sorrowful expression and said, Hey, isn't the Don't Laugh challenge fun? Why is the number dropping so fast? If possible, I'd prefer the number to only rise and not fall. But how could the viewers pay him any attention? They weren't just suppressing their anger online for fear of being purged by their Homelanders. Just as he was performing, Rodriguez, who had been located via the live stream's location, also drove to the internet cafe. Upon seeing Rodriguez, John's eyes lit up. You've come at the right time. Help me find the list of people in this live stream, and then list those who left after entering. I want to talk to them face to face, to find out what's wrong with the challenge. Of course, it would be even better if governments could help me gather these people together. This. Rodriguez was stunned by John's suggestion. Can you do that? John gently put his arm around him and asked softly. Of course. The vice president nodded frantically. John's words immediately terrified the viewers still watching the live stream. What was he planning? A massacre? Thinking of Homelander's power, they kept their eyes glued to the live stream while calling their friends and family to ask if they had watched Homelander's stream. If not, they were told not to touch it, but if they had, they were urged to come back and continue watching, or they might really die. Chapter 95 The Master of the Typhon Cleanup. Seeing Rodriguez's stiff expression, John patted him on the shoulder and said, Don't worry, I'm happy to hear it. I'll seriously consider the questions those people raised. Okay, Rodriguez nodded. By the way, what brings you here? Many countries admire your feat and have sent delegations to New York to pay their respects to you. It's scheduled for 9 p.m. tonight, and they wanted to ask if you have time. Rodriguez said. Oh, John realized, so he was here to apologize for his previous behavior. Of course, no problem. I'll be there on time tonight. By the way, John pointed to the live stream data, although I know it's a bit difficult. I still hope the number of viewers will only increase. Can you do that? Of course, that's a problem, Rodriguez said, bowing his head. 2 hours later, inside a German military camp, thousands of active-duty soldiers stood in perfect unison before their superior. Remember your next task, one soldier will go in every hour, keeping their eyes glued to the camera the entire time. Shifts will rotate every 12 hours. The number of people in this room can only increase, not decrease. At the same time, you must fully cooperate with Homelander in the video. For example, whenever Homelander finds the video funny, you should appropriately comment with ha ha ha, and occasionally offer your own commentary on the content. After delivering this long speech, the officer said sternly, This concerns the survival of the nation. You must treat it with utmost seriousness, understand? Yes, sir. The soldiers saluted in unison, and the first soldier in line went in. To cope with Homelander's ever-increasing KPIs, these national leaders were racking their brains. They not only had the military inflate viewership, but also ordered citizens who had watched the video to voluntarily return to their computers to make up for the lost numbers. John, however, didn't care about any of this. He was simply pleased to see the number of viewers in the live stream quickly surpass 200 million, and then steadily increase. Meanwhile, on a certain inhabited planet in the universe, a blinding white light spread out, and a technologically advanced city with a population of tens of millions was wiped off the planet. Thanos stood on the spaceship, looking down at the scene below, and nodded slightly. A short while later, a man with a tail on his back approached and knelt before Thanos, saying, Master, I have completely wiped out half of the life on planet Gaia. Do you have any other orders? The man looked up. It was Raditz, who had been banished from the universe by the Ancient One not long ago. However, compared to before, his eyes were now covered in a ghostly blue, making him appear somewhat dazed. Very good. Next, I will give you a mission. I want you to go to Earth and retrieve the Space Stone, Thanos said. But Master, Earth is full of hidden talents. I was banished from Earth, so... Raditz hesitated. It's alright. Thanos gently tapped Raditz's head with his Mind Stone, and then a flood of knowledge poured into Raditz's mind through the stone. You only need to find the Space Stone, use the knowledge in your mind to build a space teleportation device, and then my army and I will be waiting for your good news on this side of the portal. Thanos retrieved the Space Stone and said slowly, "Yes, Master." Raditz bowed his head and accepted the order. In a villa in Seoul, the capital of South Korea, Thor and the others exchanged somber glances. Their visit to Midgard had been a huge surprise. With the increase in visitors from other dimensions, there were now over 20 level 5 heroes, while he, the god of war of Asgard, had only achieved the title of level 4 hero. "We should leave, Thor," Loki said. "It's clear that Midgard is neither here nor there. We should focus our attention on the other 7 realms." "But, that Homelander," Loki said cruelly, "we absolutely cannot defeat him, and Father might not be able to either. Do you want to bring disaster upon Asgard? The future king of Asgard?" Loki whispered in Thor's ear, "Or perhaps you can't let go of that heroine next door who's been flirting with you lately? Once you become king of Asgard, you can always return via the Rainbow Bridge." Although it was a whisper, Eva and the others, with their exceptional physical abilities, could certainly hear him. They all gave Thor a teasing look, which caught him off guard. He quickly agreed, "Okay, let's choose a new world then. The second stop will be Vanaheim, is that alright?" Thor set his goal, then added, "But before I leave, I need to tell them." "No problem, whatever you want." At 9 o'clock that evening, John finished his Don't Laugh challenge for the day. Seeing the number of online viewers rise to 250 million, John was somewhat satisfied. At least this live stream that had taken up so much of his time had some meaning. Swooping through the air, John instantly arrived at the party venue. As soon as he appeared, he became the focus of everyone's attention. After a moment of stunned silence, someone cleverly started clapping, and everyone in the room gave John a loud round of applause. Looking at the delegations rushing to greet him, John pointed lightly, and everyone stopped in their tracks, the applause ceasing at the appropriate moment. He walked through the delegation and into the hall, saying to Rodriguez who was waiting, "Give me a microphone." Within 3 seconds, a microphone was hastily handed to him. Taking it, John walked directly to the stage, his gaze sweeping over all the guests. The entire hall fell silent, waiting for Homelander to speak. "I know why you're here. Aren't you afraid I'll slaughter you all?" John cut to the chase from the start. "What, audience? You're just afraid of dying and trying to curry favor with me." No one expected Homelander to be so direct. "Alright, I'm not some kind of psychopath. I won't kill people indiscriminately unless absolutely necessary, so you can all rest assured about that." John waved his hand and said, "How many countries are there in the world again? I think it's over 200. And you, just randomly select 100 netizens from your own country, completely random, remember, completely random, regardless of wealth or poverty, and kill them all. That'll be the end of it. How about that? I'm quite humane, aren't I? After all, I didn't kill them based on a percentage." John said with a smile, while an eerie silence fell below. "Damn it, why isn't anyone clapping? Was my presentation not exciting enough?" John pointed at the delegations from the various countries below. Clap, 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 clap. In an instant, a massive wave of applause filled the hall. Some people say the protagonist isn't sufficiently patriotic. Actually, according to the original plot, I was originally planning to go to South Korea and cause some trouble, but as I wrote, with the world pandering to the US, there wasn't much plot development for the time being. The protagonist isn't exactly a bloodthirsty individual, so I had to postpone that plot for now. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96, Doing Whatever You Want. Through the livestream, John's words spread to every corner of the earth, and everyone heard about the plan to clean up the haters. Of course, due to Homelander's terrifying power, the comments section was still filled with praise and flattery. These netizens only dared to mutter their complaints in their hearts, not express them directly. As the applause stopped, everyone thought Homelander's speech was over, but John showed no sign of stopping. "Now that things are over online, let's talk about those level 5 heroes attacking us," John said. "Mr. Homelander, I have a rebuttal." A British representative stood up, indignantly saying, "Those guys are not heroes at all, but rather well-disguised potential criminals who dared to attack our great Homelander. They deserve to die." Oh, John looked at the representative with interest. He was clearly terrified, his legs were trembling, but he still dared to stand up and speak. His courage was truly commendable. "Generally speaking, I don't like people interrupting me when I'm speaking, but you're absolutely right." John spread his arms and laughed loudly, "Only I am the true hero." A massive round of applause immediately erupted from all around, but looking at Homelander's current state, everyone inexplicably recalled the proverb, "Those whom heaven wishes to destroy, it first makes mad." But just as these people were lost in their own thoughts, John's eyes suddenly flashed red, and a dozen people instantly dissolved into a pool of blood before everyone's eyes. The sudden killing of a dozen people by Homelander caused piercing screams to erupt around them, and even those in the live broadcast room couldn't help but feel a jolt of fear. John, standing in the center of the crowd, frowned and said, "It's a bit noisy." What? Even though they were terrified, the representatives still covered their mouths. "Well done." The British representative immediately clapped and said, "Homelander has successfully eliminated another group of potential terrorists. If it weren't for Homelander's intervention, we might have been killed by these potential criminals." Rodriguez stood to the side, watching the British representative's speech, his expression somewhat strange. He felt that if things continued like this, his status as the #1 lackey would be in jeopardy. "Who said I killed anyone? Don't make things up without evidence." John frowned at the British representative. "Do you want to die? Are you dead? Did I kill you?" "No, no, no." The British representative turned pale with fright and shook his head repeatedly. "Well, did I kill you?" John asked the French representative. "No, no, I'm perfectly fine." The French representative replied. John looked at the Israeli representative beside him. "And you?" The other person immediately shook his head repeatedly. Homelander asked everyone in a row, and everyone shook their heads. "You see, everyone I asked said they're perfectly fine. Does anyone stand up and say they were killed by me? So who died? And who did I kill? So no one died at my hands, and I haven't killed anyone. Don't make things up without evidence, or I'll sue you." John's eyes were fixed on the British representative. Yes, you're right." The British representative nodded like a chick pecking at rice. "But actually, you should have gone with him." John looked at the British representative, pointing to the pool of blood on the ground. "Huh?" The British representative was startled. "I almost became a potential terrorist too. Because that guy called Rainbow Sword Master, he's your Britain's potential criminal, right? You failed to protect your own country's heroes, you deserve to die." John nudged the representative's shoulder. The others then realized that the delegations who had just died were all from countries that had attacked Homelander's heroes. I. The British representative's usually eloquent mouth trembled, unable to utter a single word. "However, I'm kind-hearted. Considering your righteous distancing yourself from those criminals, I'll forgive you. At the same time, I hope the countries behind you will learn from this and not make such a blunder again," John said, his expression softening. The British representatives, whose emotions had been like a roller coaster, breathed a sigh of relief, wishing they could like Homelander's shoes. Meanwhile, Rodriguez and other high-ranking American officials, watching the spectacle, were smug, more pleased than if they'd eaten honey. Before this, only the United States had been the scapegoat for Homelander, ridiculed by the whole world. Now, everything is equal. Homelander has single-handedly achieved global harmony. Long live Homelander. Meanwhile, viewers watching on screen felt extreme guilt. The American leadership had truly misunderstood them. They had allowed Homelander's unpredictable nature to go unpunished for months. If Gavin hadn't exposed him, nothing would have happened. Thinking about it, before this, the American leadership had single-handedly shouldered the burden, carrying the weight of the world's burdens. But now, because of Gavin's revelations, the entire world has to face an unrestrained Homelander. In an instant, everyone was cursing Gavin, the culprit, to their heart's content. Meanwhile, Gavin, still being tortured in the interrogation room after being injected with lizard serum and forced to regain consciousness, murmured, "Abba Abba." "All right, relax," John patted the British representative's shoulder gently. "I'm very kind to my own people. By the way, what's your position in the UK? I'm currently just a mere member of parliament," the British representative said, somewhat proudly. After all, He was only in his 30s and had already reached this position. He could even try for foreign secretary in the future. Ah. Just a member of parliament? That's a bit low. You speak so eloquently, I think it would be a waste not to appoint you as a Secretary of State. John stroked his chin. There are 17 Secretaries of State in the UK. Pick one. I'll write you a letter of recommendation to the Prime Minister. I think I have some influence. Ah, is that really possible? The British representative's eyes shone with the promise of a bright future. Still too low? How about you hold multiple positions, like Foreign Secretary, Defense Secretary, and Home Secretary all at once? If all else fails, how about you become Prime Minister? John suggested. That's not a good idea, the British representative said, his eyes gleaming, instinctively trying to sound humble. Not a good idea? Then forget it. It seems you really like the position of Member of Parliament. You can stay in it for life, John said casually, then ignored the petrified British representative beside him. You're given a chance, so take it. What are you pretending for? John thought disdainfully. Chapter 97 Cosplaying Injustice Superman. Actually, I think you've misunderstood me a bit, John said, looking at the representatives present and those watching the live stream. I actually live a very frugal life. Despite possessing the power to strengthen the entire world, I only have a mere 6 girlfriends, 1, 2, 3, and they're all willingly with me. Hellish Snow, watching the live stream, chimed in. Oh, right. And my personal savings are less than 10 billion. I'm not even the richest person in America. I just live in a seaside villa. I haven't had you build any extravagant wonders that surround the entire world. Am I not restrained enough? John asked, a hint of grievance in his voice. Actually, we were planning to organize a global beauty pageant for you, Rodriguez said, standing to the side. The participants will include not only people from this world but also beauties from other dimensions. John was genuinely surprised. Huh? Is that so? This is a plan devised by various countries out of consideration for your thrifty lifestyle, Rodriguez explained, making the male viewers on the other side of the live stream nearly go crazy with envy. Ahem, I'm very pleased that you have this intention, but let's forget about the election. John waved his hand lightly. I advocate free love. Also, I just got some breaking news. Rodriguez leaned closer and whispered, we just discovered a portal to another dimension. Oh. John became a little interested. Did you find out anything? They're also in the modern world, and the situation is the same as here, except there doesn't seem to be any supernatural power there, it's just... Rodriguez hesitated. Just what? The timeline in that world is a bit strange. Yesterday it was winter and snowing, and today it's suddenly summer. Rodriguez said, what do you think we should do about that world? You guys handle that yourselves. I don't want to get too involved. John said calmly. But I'm very interested in that world. Tell me the location, I'll go and have some fun for a couple of days. As Rodriguez gave him the address, John vanished from his side in an instant. The gathering, held for the Homelander, grew quiet after the protagonist's departure, but the representatives from various countries weren't too disappointed, at least they had survived, right? In a makeshift military base in Tennessee, USA, a dozen soldiers injected with the abomination serum crouched. The next moment, a figure arrived instantly, glanced at the seemingly still soldiers, and rushed into the portal. On the other side of the portal was a Japanese-style house, guarded by a group of soldiers. John bypassed them, soaring into the street outside. I think I know where I am now. John's perspective swept across the city, clearly seeing the words the Sherlock Holmes of the Heisei era and the savior of the Japanese police written on a newspaper lying in a corner. No wonder they say the timeline here is messed up, a perpetual elementary school student, John remarked. However, from his perspective, Shinichi Kudo wasn't yet an elementary school student, he was currently at the very beginning of the story, solving a case with a black organization's roller coaster. But here comes the extra cash, doesn't it? John's gaze swept across the streets of Beacon City, finally settling on the black organization's most hard-working member, who was riding a roller coaster. Having found his target, John wasn't in a hurry, walking steadily towards Tropical Land. Along the way, his black battlesuit and handsome, young foreign appearance attracted countless stares. Hey, friend, are you cosplaying Injustice Superman? A friendly man tried to put his arm around John's shoulder, but John grabbed him mid-air. You can call me Homelander. What do you need? John held the man's slender wrist, his tone unusually gentle, though the viewers on the other end of the live stream secretly worried for the young man. Seemingly sensing the boy's somewhat unapproachable nature, the man gave an awkward smile, withdrew his hand, and said, "Can I take a picture with you?" "Of course, no problem." Seeing that there was plenty of time, John smiled and posed for a photo with him. After this successful cosplay, people immediately gathered around, marveling at the realism of John's portrayal, his physique, the quality of his costume. It was simply amazing. John didn't mind, smiling as he took over a dozen photos with him, before refusing further requests before becoming impatient. "Hey, buddy, how about one last photo with me?" A thuggish-looking young man blocked John's path, but the next moment he was lifted up and thrown into a trash can a few meters away. "I said I didn't want to take any more photos, and I don't want to repeat myself," John said calmly amidst the gasps of those around him, then strode towards the amusement park. But the next moment, a figure in a white karate uniform blocked John's way, frowning and saying, "Sir, I know you have some skill, but is this bullying a bit?" The next moment, feeling the other person was blocking his way, John lightly kicked out, sending the guy slamming into the wall behind him, then silently walked towards the amusement park. Seeing the humanoid figure embedded in the wall, the surrounding people finally understood what had happened. They looked at John with some fear, but John didn't even stop walking. At that moment, inside the amusement park, a murder case was unfolding. Inspector Major, who had just arrived, looked at the headless corpse before him, while two men in black were about to leave behind him. But the next moment, a confident voice rang out from the side, "Officer, this is a murder case. The victim and the murderer are together, among us. Are you telling the truth now, Kudo?" Inspector Major asked seriously. As soon as Kudo Shinichi's identity was revealed, everyone around, including the men in black, looked at the boy with astonishment. They hadn't expected that this was the savior of the Japanese police. Kudo Shinichi accepted the astonished gazes of those around him with satisfaction, but the next moment, a hand as perfect as jade pressed directly onto his face, violently throwing him away. "Damn it, who is this? Are you cosplaying as Injustice Superman?" Kudo Shinichi looked at the man who had pushed him away in surprise. But the next moment, he saw in horror that the man cosplaying Injustice Superman walked straight up to the silver-haired man in black, grabbed him by the skull, and yanked him up. Then, snap! A torrent of blood splattered all over everyone around. Conan is just a transitional project. To get through these 3 days of live streams, it can't stay in for too long. After all, can you imagine Homelander solving cases while mixed in with Conan? John's character has completely collapsed, okay? Chapter 98 9 Clans. 6. The familiar screams rang out again. John had become somewhat accustomed to the background music surrounding him as he killed, while everyone, including Shinichi Kudo, stared blankly at John's actions, their faces glazed over, completely bewildered. "What happened? The thing splattered on my face. Blood? Someone's been killed," Shinichi Kudo thought blankly. Then he saw the guy cosplaying as Injustice Superman continue walking towards another slightly overweight man. "He's trying to kill more." A surge of inexplicable anger rose within him, and Shinichi Kudo wanted to step forward without hesitation to stop the man's actions. But in the blink of an eye, a crimson ray suddenly shot out from the cosplayer's eye, piercing the head of Vodka, who was about to draw his gun to avenge his boss. Shinichi Kudo, who had been about to step forward to stop him, froze on the spot. "What is this? A laser weapon? How can it be so powerful? Oh dear, I forgot to ask them where the black organization is located. Killing these two isn't enough to make up the numbers." John belatedly realized this as he looked at Jin and Vodka. Casually tossing aside the Jin body he was still holding, John turned to Inspector Major, whose hands were trembling as he pointed a gun at him, and said, "I advise you not to shoot, or I'll retaliate in kind." "Who are you?" Inspector Major asked, somewhat frightened, looking at the man who seemed like a true Superman. "Me? I'd say I'm the future ruler of this planet. You can call me Homelander," John replied after a moment's thought. Meanwhile, Rodriguez, who learned through the live stream that Homelander had already gone, immediately said to the president, "Homelander is gone. We'd better not delay and contact the governments of the other side directly, otherwise I'm afraid the situation will be unmanageable. If they anger Homelander, we might also be targeted, so it's best to establish our planet's leadership before anything happens." "No problem, I'll have the military order the Abomination Legion to go and talk to them," President Ellis said with undisguised ease. In their eyes, the other side was just an ordinary planet whose strongest destructive power was nuclear bombardment, easily subdued by any level 5 hero. The Abomination Legion's visit wasn't about domination, but about establishing their planet's leadership. Knowing the disparity between the two sides, the other side certainly wouldn't refuse, they would most likely submit without hesitation. Moreover, the planet's structure was similar to theirs, and their criminal reserves were definitely similar, meaning they would pay Homelander twice as many criminals, significantly reducing their collection efforts. In the amusement park, John, amidst the fearful gazes of those around him, used his supervision to scan the entire city for all information related to the Black Organization. But the next moment, an angry, questioning voice came from the side. "Hey, why did you kill them for no reason?" Shinichi Kudo glared at John, demanding an explanation. "John? Inspector Major, I think he's just, ugh." Shinichi Kudo grimaced in pain as John grabbed him and lifted him up. Shinichi. Ran Mori, seeing her beloved being attacked, disregarded her fear and launched a sweeping kick, but John grabbed her ankle with his other hand and lifted her upside down. "I advise you not to meddle, or you'll be the next one to die," John said coldly, holding Shinichi Kudo. This guy reminded him of that guy named Luffy, equally annoying. But the next moment, a bullet burst from the barrel, striking John in the temple. With a clang, John turned his head away, his gaze icy. Major Juzo watched the bullet fall from the man's temple, his voice trembling as he said, "Release those two hostages, or else." The next moment, John spat out saliva, which traveled at dozens of times the speed of sound, instantly obliterating Major Juzo and the skyscraper behind him. How could this be? Shinichi Kudo stared blankly at the dust cloud billowing after the building collapsed. What had he just spat out? High explosives. The collapse of common sense made it impossible for him to accept his worldview. He even ignored the death of Major Juzo beside him. But Ran Mori, without hesitation, kicked John in the cheek. With a smack, John's right cheek was successfully struck. "They're finished," Rodriguez, watching the live stream, exclaimed. The others watching the live stream nodded in agreement. This woman and her family were all doomed. They already foresaw what kind of reckoning awaited this girl's family once the other world understood its position and the strength of the Homelander. Inside the amusement park, John, after being kicked, didn't even have a mark on his face. Instead, he chuckled softly. Then, the still stunned Shinichi Kudo was thrown aside, and John released his grip on Ran Mori's ankle. Seeing the others' worry gaze, John didn't attack again. Instead, he pointed at Ran Mori's chest, his gaze seemingly locked onto the live stream camera, his smiling eyes conveying a message to everyone watching. "What does Homelander mean by this?" Ellis asked, puzzled. But the vice president, understanding perfectly, explained, "Homelander means that this woman is his contract, but since it's being broadcast live, going straight to bed with her wouldn't be appropriate. After he leaves, we'll send all the good-looking women within 9 generations of him to his villa." That's roughly the gist of it. Huh? Those around looked at Rodriguez in astonishment. He could deduce so much from just one action? Homelander may not think that way, but we have to do it, understand? Rodriguez said succinctly. As a deep researcher of Homelander's philosophy, he thinks about how to better flatter him every night before bed. He can proudly say that no one understands Homelander better than him. Even in John's mind, the order of friendship is as follows: Tony Stark, Gwen Stacy, Hellfire, Rodriguez, Betty. In John's hierarchy of friendships, Rodriguez has even managed to climb to 4th place through his flattery skills. John can even agree to some not too outrageous requests after consideration. It can only be said that a sycophant can have everything in the end. Meanwhile, in the amusement park, Homelander, who had marked Ran Mori, didn't continue to pester him but flew directly towards the Black Organization's stronghold in Beacon City. Because he knew that Rodriguez would definitely understand what he meant, and might even perform exceptionally well. Chapter 99 The debt of gratitude to the motherland can never be repaid in a lifetime. At midday, under the blazing sun, John hovered in midair, gazing down at the biopharmaceutical factory. His superhuman vision allowed him to scan every corner of the city, ultimately confirming that this factory was the Black Organization's base in Beacon City. I wonder how much progress I'd gain if I wiped out all the distilleries in the world, 0.2 or 0.3? John muttered to himself. Last time, John accumulated good and evil points equivalent to approximately 330,000 criminals' lives to barely fill the progress bar. This time, the progress bar required 100 times more energy, the equivalent of 33 million death row inmates, to fully fill it. It was utterly brutal. At this rate of increase, filling the progress bar next time would require 3.3 billion death row inmates. Even if the entire population of the United States were turned into death row, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy his murders. Fortunately, this time an additional portal to another dimension had appeared, and more such portals would appear in the future. Once connected to worlds with a more expansive multiverse background, there would be a massive amount of experienced monsters. John paused for a moment, then looked down at the pharmaceutical factory, locking onto a man dressed in black. He unleashed a barrage of intense rays, faster than a machine gun, sweeping downwards. Inside the factory, Shiho Miyano, in a white lab coat, was examining the parameters of a newly developed drug when she heard a sizzling sound of roasting meat. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. What's going on? The girl, smelling the acrid burning odor, initially thought someone was recklessly grilling meat in the distillery's research facility, and probably burning it badly. But turning her head through the bulletproof glass door, she saw two men in black uniforms lying on the ground, each with an egg-sized hole in their forehead, the edges charred and emitting plumes of white smoke. Shiho Miyano's eyes widened, and she gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Having dealt with assassins for years, she wasn't overly afraid. Aihabara, or rather, Shiho Miyano. A dark figure suddenly appeared before her, looking at her curiously. Startled by the sudden appearance, she quickly took a step back, then warily scrutinized the person before her. Dressed in a black bodysuit with a scarlet cape fastened at the back, a large black S logo on the chest, and possessing a striking appearance comparable to a celebrity, he was sizing her up, or rather, scrutinizing her like a lab rat. Under this man's somewhat aggressive gaze, Shiho Miyano felt as if she had been stripped naked, with no secrets left. Knowing this man was definitely not simple, she politely said, "Hello, my name is Shiho Miyano." As she spoke, she extended her arm, but the other man made no move to shake her hand, his gaze gradually shifting from curiosity to disappointment. Tisk, Aihabara is cuter in her current state. It's a shame she's not on her meds, John commented. Is this guy crazy? And who is Aihabara anyway? He's the one who needs to take his meds, Shiho Miyano thought to herself, but of course, she didn't show it on her face. Instead, she put on an innocent and obedient expression. Alright, I won't tease you anymore. John withdrew his gaze and said, I've basically wiped out all the members of the brewery in Bika City. You just stay here quietly. Someone will come to take you out within 5 hours. Shiho Miyano was stunned and asked, What do you mean? Just stay here obediently, if you want to live with your sister. John said. Just now, he had already gone through all the information in the organization and knew the locations of breweries in several surrounding cities. This way, he only needed to follow the clues and he could uproot all the breweries in the world in a single day. It could be said that John alone could finish what should have been a 1,000+ episode Conan story in a single day. You mean my sister? What happened to her? Hearing news about her sister, the girl was a little flustered. But John in front of her didn't even bother to respond to her thoughts. He simply shot into the sky, smashed a large hole in the roof, and disappeared. Meanwhile, the Rodriguez government also mobilized, immediately dispatching the Abomination Legion to rush at supersonic speed to the Japanese Prime Minister's office in Nagatacho, Chiyoda-ku, Tokyo. Despite enduring a hail of bullets from surrounding gunfire, these 4-meter-tall bald soldiers were unharmed, except for minor tears in their clothing. Prime Minister of Japan from this planet, I officially represent the U.S. government of the main world to discuss something with you, the Abomination soldier said in a muffled voice, standing before the terrified Japanese Prime Minister. Using translation software, the soldier's English was seamlessly translated into Japanese, leaving the Prime Minister bewildered. What did this planet mean? And when did the U.S. government acquire such genetic modification capabilities? Have you heard of parallel universes? Due to unknown reasons, a portal has formed between two Earths in different universes. What we want to do now is to get you to directly contact other countries and sit down for a proper discussion, the leading Abomination soldier said. Believe me, calming down is better for both of us. With the technology of your world, you pose no threat to us, and we have no plans to directly deploy troops for the time being. Faced with the overwhelming abomination of the soldiers, the Japanese Prime Minister nodded hastily, then without hesitation instructed his assistant to dial the White House. His first words were, "Coordinates, Japan. Another extraterrestrial civilization has been discovered here." 3 hours later, as John's destruction of the distillery extended towards Europe and America, the governments of the Conan world, reviewing the intelligence gathered by their subordinates, basically understood the situation. With disbelief in their eyes, they immediately agreed to discuss the matter via video conference. Thus, the governments of the two worlds met. Looking at the various races of black, white, and yellow on the other side of the screen, even knowing that the two worlds were parallel universes with the same historical trajectory, the governments of the Conan world still found it hard to believe. First, before the meeting begins, we must once again thank Homelander for protecting the entire world. Homelander's kindness to the entire world can never be repaid in a lifetime. At the outset, the Marvel World's meeting organizers, under the bewildered and confused gazes of the Conan world's government, recited their opening remarks. What is all this? Is this some kind of custom from the other world? Are the people of their homeland in that world similar to the God of the Western Bible? And why do we have to thank God at meetings in modern society? I hope you'll all join us in reciting this. Rodriguez looked at the government of the other world with an extremely imposing gaze. Wandifa? The leaders of the various countries in the other world all wore expressions of utter incomprehension. The book club has been set up. Interested readers can join by clicking the link below. Chapter 100 Marvel Comics and Colonialism. At the beginning of the meeting, let's all express our gratitude to our homeland. It's better for everyone. I'll explain the reasons later, President Ellis said calmly, looking at the person opposite him. Meanwhile, the leaders of the various Marvel nations stared at the officials on the other side of the screen with extremely aggressive gazes. In their eyes, these people were nothing more than tribal chiefs with abundant resources. A low-level world that couldn't even muster a level 3 hero. The only thing that could threaten them was weapons of mass destruction like hydrogen bombs and nuclear bombs. But the problem was that the passage between the two worlds was just a spatial portal less than 3 meters wide. A level 5 hero could easily guard this side, ensuring that the other side's nuclear weapons wouldn't threaten their homeland, while they could freely send people there. The reason they hadn't completely wiped out the other side was because the Marvel officials knew that such spatial portals would only increase in the future. Therefore, the resources produced by the other world weren't actually valuable, they would become commonplace. In fact, prices in the real world had plummeted in a short period due to the appearance of the spatial portal, and this was expected to continue for some time. Thank you, Homelander, for your kindness. Under the somewhat oppressive gaze of the Marvel government, the heads of state from various countries in the Conan government read out haltingly. Very good. Ellis clapped his hands and said, since we all believe in Homelander, that makes things easier. Here's a document for you to look at, it will be very helpful in understanding our world. As he spoke, Ellis's assistant immediately passed over basic information about this world. The document included what Homelander was, why there were portals, the various anomalies caused by portals, and some basic technology trees. Before long, the document was passed to the government on the other side, who immediately began to examine it. But the more they flipped through, the more astonished the Conan world's governments became, because this fantasy setting had actually become reality, and they also understood why these people had thanked Homelander at the beginning of the meeting. Unbelievable, simply unbelievable. The president of the Conan world's United States said, I never thought that the guys from DC and Marvel Comics actually existed, that things from fantasy had actually appeared. I know DC Comics, but what is Marvel? Rodriguez, who was standing next to him, noticed the information in the other party's words and asked, what is Marvel? Does your world have DC but not Marvel Comics? Iron Man is a hero from Marvel Comics, the US government in the Conan world explained. What do you mean? You're saying Iron Man is a hero from Marvel Comics? But Tony Stark isn't from that Marvel Comics universe, he's our native hero, Ellis corrected, also noticing something amiss. Huh? The leaders of the various countries in the Conan world exchanged glances, a simultaneous guess forming in their minds. The US president of the Conan world tentatively asked, if Iron Man, Tony Stark, is truly a native of your world, is it possible that your world is the prototype for Marvel Comics? The Marvel governments were momentarily flustered. Rodriguez was the first to react, immediately saying, since you say Iron Man is a Marvel Comics character, are there any other famous characters? Captain America, Hulk, Spider-Man, Abomination, SHIELD, Hydra, Thor. Someone on the other end of the video chat pondered for a moment before replying, and the Marvel side fell completely silent. Putting aside everything else, the mere presence of SHIELD, Hydra, and Captain America is practically proof enough. "We're actually characters from a comic book," the British Prime Minister exclaimed, somewhat speechless. "We need you to send us all the information about Marvel within a day," Ellis commanded, forcing himself to remain calm. The governments on the other side of Conan didn't refuse. Knowing they were facing the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and considering its vast world-building, Conan's government had no intention of resisting. It would be utterly humiliating. Ahem. Rodriguez cleared his throat twice, suppressing his various questions, and said, "Let's put the comics aside for now. You've probably seen the information I gave you earlier. In the future, there will inevitably be more and more space portals leading to different planets and universes. So although our technology and overall strength can overwhelm yours, because of your mediocrity and weakness, we have no urgent intention to conquer you. After this meeting, for planets like yours that need poverty alleviation, we will share non-classified information from various disciplines with you. At the same time, you must also open up all your research materials so we can see what we can learn from you. This is also to avoid excessive waste of research funds, and at the same time, we can send experts from backward disciplines to study in the worlds of the other side's advanced disciplines. This is also a great thing to promote scientific exchange between our two planets. As for resources, we don't need much. For all the processed materials, Marvel World only needs to take 10%. Rodriguez crossed his arms in front of the table and grinned. What, 10%? How can that be so much? All the officials in the Conan world protested, but before they could say more than a few words, Ellis slammed his hand on the table and stood up, saying, "Too much? Where is it too much?" Rodriguez chimed in, "Please recognize your world's position. We could easily intervene militarily on your planet and establish colonies, but we're wasting our time negotiating here. We've already made enough concessions." The Russian representative also chuckled, "You are all highly respected leaders from the other planet. Let me tell you a few stories. The United States and the Native Americans, Hitler and the Jews, Pol Pot in Cambodia." Cough cough cough. The German president coughed violently. "So what if you're a permanent member of the UN Security Council? Threaten us if you want, but why bring up our dark history?" The faces of the countries in the Conan world were even more unpleasant than his. Looking at the contemptuous expressions on the faces of everyone on the other side of the screen, a surge of anger welled up from the bottom of his heart, but he was powerless to do anything about it. "Please consider this carefully. You can treat it as a simple transaction. I think the data we'll give you later is more than worth as 10% of the resources. Don't limit your vision to this small planet. I believe that within 10 years, with our rapid technological advancements, we will be fully capable of colonizing the solar system. What you gain will definitely outweigh what you lose. Don't just focus on what you've lost, also consider what you've gained." End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.